Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Hello, and welcome to episode 67 of Mythos Busters. I'm one of your hosts, I'm Sean. Joining me tonight are my buddies Scott. Hey, Scott.
Oh, hi.
How are you? I know I'm distracting you from the thing I just asked you to do, which was kind of a dick move, but here we are.
You are, but you are a welcome distraction, sir.
Aww. Well, I'm glad you're here for this episode.
Me too.
I'm also kind of glad, at least, that Ian's here. Hi, Ian.
Wow. Thanks for that lukewarm welcome.
Harsh. How are you?
Not bad. Yeah, I'm excited for this episode and excited for all the Arkham content that's coming in the next couple months.
It's kind of a flood already, isn't it?
Yeah, I just got my Return to Carcosa box yesterday, so I'm getting ready to dive into a new Carcosa campaign. Probably tonight, maybe tomorrow.
Man. Curtain call? So non-spoilery preview here, but curtain call was good. There were obviously some changes. It felt similar-ish. Last King was like, oh, God, what's happening? This isn't the scenario I know anymore. I'm resigning.
A whole new world.
That might just be my experience, but that's how that played for me.
It's pretty accurate, I think. Pretty accurate.
So unfortunately, Nick is not going to be with us tonight. He might hop on later. I don't know. However, we have a very special guest with us tonight. I would like to welcome back to the podcast, Mr. Matt Newman. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah, it's good.
This is what, fourth time I've been on? Third or fourth?
Depends on if we're counting the garbled nonsense that was that one GenCon recording as an appearance.
Sure.
I think it's at least the fourth.
Yes.
If not the fifth, actually.
Yeah, it might actually be, because, yeah.
Yeah, so you're basically a host at this point.
Yeah, there you go. Add me to the list.
I think you're coming up on...
When do I get Patreon rewards?
Well, let's see what we can square you up with.
I mean, you're very close to beating Tom.
Yes, so. I was just gonna say, like, he's gotta be
Oh, no.
edging up on Tom here.
Oh, no.
Poor Tom.
Now I'm Tom.
All right, well, we've got a really fun episode for you guys tonight. We're gonna run through kind of our normal intros. We've got the out of context quote Arbits contest to resolve, which I'm very excited about. And then we're doing this a little bit out of order, so you'll have to forgive us if any of you out there are kind of slaves to sequence. But instead of talking specifically about the last two scenarios in the Circle Undone cycle, we're going to kind of talk to Matt about the cycle as a whole and kind of wrap it up that way. And then as well at the end, and we're putting this at the end because we realize that probably fewer people are going to be ready to talk about this in as much detail as we're about to, but then we're going to talk to Matt about the Blob and everything that went into that. And then, of course, we'll round it out with some technical time.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hop in. Guys, what you been playing? Ian, what you got going on right now?
Oh, my latest and greatest, well, not the greatest because it was a campaign loss, but I started a new TCU campaign with Mark and Rex, Taboo style. And that was a lot of fun as a campaign. My Mark was basically a flamethrower build with Venturer and upgraded emergency quiche and extra ammunition. So I basically never ran out of ammo for my flamethrower in any scenario. I always had just
because quiche puts supplies on the Venturer, right. And then the Venturer port. Okay,
yep.
I see how that works. Sorry,
yep.
I've never used Venturer. It's good.
Yeah, I haven't used Venturer a ton, but I was like, I don't want to run out of ammo for the flamethrower. That's such a letdown. So I brought in Venturer, and very simple build. It's basically those cards are the core of the deck, but it was a lot of fun. And then Rex was pretty much, doing your standard Rex things. Like I was thinking of doing this kind of build to make a lot of use of extra, since with the Taboo, can only do his little extra clue once per turn. I was trying to include lots of other kind of extra effects when you investigate, like burglary and what else did I had? I think lucky cigarette case, that kind of thing, which was okay. But in the end, because Mark wasn't really pulling his weight clue wise, like Rex was basically just spent all his time getting clues and didn't really have a lot of time to do extra stuff. But it was a fun campaign because it was a anti-lodge campaign. So I had a lot of fun scenarios of like Mark just busting into every area, just roasting everything. And one of my favorite moments was in For the Greater Good because what's the guy in the lounge? I think August is his name.
Yeah, August.
Yeah, he's sitting there just reading, and there's a cultist in there. So Mark just busts in with a flamethrower, roasts him to death, and then Rex comes in and parlays with August.
Now that I have your attention,
just ignore that roasted man in the corner. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And in Before the Black Throne, I was one turn away from winning. Yeah, I needed one more, and Azathoth came out on top. I just needed one more turn. Yeah, it was so close, but yeah, that was a fun campaign. Yeah, so it was. There were all these little things that I looked at that I could have done differently, but it was just it was a lot of the like locations were not where I needed them to be, and so yeah, but
that will happen. They're a power couple, though. Oh, I love Mark and Murph.
Yeah,
yeah. That Dunwich Iron Man we did was just ludicrous. Yeah. He attack, but also protect.
Yes, he does. And when he's not protecting, he just draws lots of cards.
Yeah. And then, so for Return to Carcosa, I have Agnes and Carolyn prepped.
Ooh,
which I have not. They're kind of an obvious pairing, but I haven't played it yet, and I like some of the new
Thelma and Louise builds.
Yeah, and I have some of the new cards, like the what is it called? The mirror, the bonded mirror with the
hallowed mirror.
Mm-hmm. Hallowed mirror, yeah. Which with the art, it kind of reminds me of the mirror in Harry Potter that would show you what you desire most. Yeah, so in my head canon, that's why it heals horror, because it's showing you what you want to see. But
funny, yeah, I too saw myself winning the Quidditch Cup.
So I have that set for Carolyn and some other cards, but yeah, the Mark and Red, I think I have some of my most fun with the campaigns when the campaign has all out and I've played it and I kind of know, like the blind runs are fun, but they're usually a hot mess, and so they're like the hot mess kind of fun. And then my after the cycle is out campaigns are like the kind of strategic, like I know it's coming, let me build for it, and that can be fun too. Mm-hmm.
Scott, what have you been playing?
Well, I finished my TCU. It wasn't my blind play to start, but it was when you sent me that Diana deck solo list. And I think, when did you send it to me? I think we were about like halfway through the cycle.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think it was right after the upgraded Enchanted Blades came out, because that was the point where I was like, okay, yeah, she upgrades into that.
Yeah, that's what it was. So that ended up becoming my blind playthrough solo for TCU.
Okay.
And I was able to successfully finish the campaign on my blind playthrough with Diana. So
I'd say Diana won, but we are going to get to eventually how, that's maybe not the best way to describe what happens when you quote-unquote win this campaign.
I'll just say I got very lucky with choices in scenario 8. It could have gone south, and but we'll cover that in an episode with all the spoilers and stuff. But it easily could have gone tits up. The other one, I started another TCU campaign on hard with Brian, Casey, and Alex, and I decided to play Skids because I played as Skids and I liked it. Except I did not like it in this one. Because we played, what's the first one? Witching Hour? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I was not first player. I forget where I was in the player order. I think it was last.
You got hit with like Racked and Bedeviled, didn't you?
No, the locations I got. So I was mostly enemy management, but I had like a couple scene of the crimes, flashlights, like just some super basic clue stuff. My location was a 4-shroud location that whenever I discovered clues, I discarded that many cards. I forget which one that one was.
Yeah.
That sounds.
And then when we got the Arkham Woods, it was the when you move here, take a willpower test. If you fail, like take a horror or something. Plus, it was also 4-shroud. So, like, I did not like. There was multiple turns where I'm like, draw card, gain a resource. Like, I just did not have anything to do that was effective in any sense of the word. Didn't draw any enemies. Oh man, it was terrible. So
the old Arkham wheel spin. We've all been there.
yeah. Now we were playing on hard, which isn't crazy, but most of my clue stuff is aimed at flashlighting 2-shroud locations or scene of the crime or whatever. But diabolic voices.
Ooh.
The revelation where you test 3 willpower for each point you failed, discard a card, whatever. So there was a point, Alex is playing Silas, and he draws diabolic voices. And so Silas is down by 1. I think he had only 1 or 2 cards in their hand or something like that. And he's like, you know what, I'm just going to tank it, whatever. Tests, he pulls the tablet. The tablet is, if you fail, draw the bottommost treachery of the discard deck.
Uh-oh.
It was a diabolic voices.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, I have nothing in my hand, so I'm going to test it again. Draws the tablet again. The next bottom card, diabolic voices. So he got hit with 3 diabolic voices. In our first run through of the encounter deck, we played 5 ancient evils because of the tablet. Like our first encounter phase of the game, there was 2 like the first 2 or 3 treacheries. No, the first 2 treacheries were ancient evils. There was an enemy in there. So the next time we drew tablets and failed, we drew ancient evils. Like it was just
Should have accepted your fate or rejected your fate, or whichever one doesn't give you tablets. I don't remember.
I think we accepted our fate.
Well then,
Because I don't think we accepted our
rejected
fate.
it.
Cases in the chat, yeah. Anyways, it was 100% not a shit show. But it was actually a shit show. It was...
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, I'm excited. We got 5 XP. We just all died. And I actually did some really finagling things where I like took certain enemies and I used, was it Narrow Escape, to cancel an attack while drawing a resource to get attack of opportunity off an enemy that does 2 health. Anyways, I got a physical trauma on Skid instead of a mental trauma. I was very proud of myself with how I like juggled enemy. Like the last turn took forever because we were trying to figure out how we could go out with the trauma of our choice. And like it was ridiculous.
you know, there's a card that lets you do that.
There is.
You could have just played "I'll see you in hell."
Yeah, I could have done that, but I was trying to play a good deck. And,
Whoa.
Wow.
You could.
I figured Skid's gonna get enough
gotten
trauma as it is.
and then like helped all your friends out, but no.
Well, you know what, Nick or Matt, I am going
I
to
am
throw
Nick
in. Yeah, you are Nick.
You guys are basically the same person.
it's pretty
Look at me, I am the Nick now. I will get adaptable, and I'm gonna put in a. I'll see you in hell.
There you go.
There you go.
How about that?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Excellent. Matt, what you been playing?
Arkham wise,
Yeah.
I can't tell you.
Yeah, that's worth a shot.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean,
Okay,
it's very rare that I actually get the chance to play like legal Arkham.
That's
right?
not true.
Like,
That's not true. This very
that's
afternoon.
true. Yes, we played Constellation together.
I'm going to make Matt rave about our custom scenario.
It was good.
So,
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I died.
But we won.
Yeah.
It was a
Mission
noble
accomplished.
death.
Yeah, that was good though. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, like besides that, like very rare. I'm almost always playtesting. So,
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for how much content is coming out and the cadence it's coming out at, I cannot imagine you sleep.
I don't.
Okay, well there it is.
But that has less to do with work and more to do with just my usual insomnia.
Oh, okay. Well, so that makes sense then.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. I'll sleep when Azathoth wakes up.
Excellent. Yeah, then I suppose for my part, I've basically updated you guys. I haven't had much time to play, but I've run now 2 scenarios in Return to Carcosa. I'm running a Lola deck alongside a Mark deck.
Yeah, you are.
It's actually been fun so far. Lola's performing all right. She's performing as expected. She's gonna get better when I finally get some XP, but it's been a rough go so far.
Lola requires some experience for sure.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Both in playing her and for card purchasing.
That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll be excited to see where the rest of that goes. I'm up against Echoes of the Past next. So
Are you doing doubt or conviction?
so far I'm Conviction.
Okay.
Mostly because I just kind of like the bosses. I like to kill the
Yeah.
bosses.
Yeah. And you've got
Burning
Mark,
that house
so-
down is just really attractive. Like, yeah.
All right, perfect. So let's hop into our normal catch-ups here. Ian, what patron news have we?
All right, patron news. First off, just a general thanks to all our patrons for helping us do what we do. Special thanks to our board members, Chris B, Chris H, Chris U, our conglomeration of Chris's, Cyclos, Alex, Ian, Kyle, Philip, Dave, Abilia, Nathan, Chad, and Robert. Thank you guys so much for being members of our board and making all those tough board decisions. Special shout out to a random patron this time around is to Queen Tara. Thank you, Queen Tara. And I think that's about it. We don't really have anything new other than just a reminder that if you are a patron and have not yet joined our special patron channel on Discord, you can certainly message any one of us to get access to that, because it's a nice kind of alcove place thing in Discord away from the big crowd that you can discuss with others.
chamber.
Yeah.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
Oh, sorry.
I promise we don't eat babies there.
Can confirm. Can confirm.
Yeah. It's the inner sanctum for sure.
But you'll get a cubicle and you'll get a used chair that someone else has farted in hundreds of times. That's just, it's corporate life. You're just going to have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Just hundreds?
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. So let's hop in to resolve our last Arbits contest. Pretty excited about this. So last episode, we asked you guys to listen to past episodes of Mythos Busters and give us quotes. Things, ideally silly things that we've said. And we're going to go through these here, and I'm just going to have everyone else kind of try to guess who said what. So here we go. I'm going to... Do you want to play, Matt?
Oh, I mean, sure. I'm
You can
going to be
peek over
awful
my
at it. I
shoulder
didn't even
if you
know we were
want.
doing this.
So, Nick was nice enough to throw these together. He actually just figured out which episode was quoted the most. And
Unsurprisingly.
it's episode 44, Bitchfest 2018, or Moanfest 2018, depending on how early you downloaded it. And the Buster that got quoted most was Nick, which should probably surprise no one.
What? Oh, okay.
Who did you think it would be? Oh, that wasn't a real what? Never mind.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I'm not going to look.
Okay, you're not going to look. So, first quote is, "Now that you've dazzled us with your brilliance of song making, maybe dazzle us with your brilliance of deck building."
That sounds like a Sean quote to me.
It's pretty sassy. I don't know.
The thing is, it's really long. Like, Sean likes to do, like, long quotes. Like, there's a long
Sean
joke
likes
to
to
it.
talk.
What?
No, but I just...
I'm loquacious. What are you talking about?
I would say Scott, because it sounds kind of Scottish, like Scottish. Scott
Now that you-
ish.
Show us your good
Yeah,
deck building.
this one's totally Ian.
Oh,
There it is.
What?
There it is. Yeah, I wouldn't have expected that either.
I impressed myself. Huh?
What episode was you...
That let's see, that's episode 24.
Oh, I
Back
have
from
no
October of
recollection at
2017.
all of saying that.
That's probably going to happen a lot.
How many podcast Ian, between your now at least 3 that I know of podcasts, how many episodes do you think you've been on? 'Cause after a while they do start to blur.
Oh, yeah.
I have no freaking idea.
Several hundred?
Let's see. Great Company was up to 60 something at the end. We're on 6. It's 100-ish something probably.
Yeah. That's actually about where I'm at too.
Well, you're at 120. No, 130 before you include anything besides Mythos Busters and
Yeah.
Great company. So
Whew. All right, next quote. You're not just a receptacle here, Sean. Finish him.
That sounds like Nick.
that's Nick. Yeah,
Yep. Dead to rights. All right, next one is Infinite Coats. No one's ever seen Yorick's t-shirt.
What?
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
York's t-shirt.
That is not me.
I'm gonna guess Sean for some reason.
Yeah.
That was me, though. Again, I have no recollection of when that came. Like, I have no idea what that means. But yeah, that was me. All right, next one. So what you're
I
saying?
think it's he puts on so many leather coats because he keeps getting it back that you never see what's
there it
underneath
is.
the coats.
There it is.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah. Okay, someone's probably making a joke about Yorick stripping down.
Oh God.
Yeah.
All right, next one. So what you're saying is you're the 1%. And then another person said 1% confirmed.
Well, that's freaking hard.
Yeah,
I want to say I'm involved there.
Yep.
But
I'm involved there.
I think I'm the first one.
Yeah,
so what
that's
you're
correct.
saying is you're. Yeah. Okay.
And then Ian said 1% confirmed.
Oh, okay.
That's episode 37. Again, not quite sure what we were referencing there.
Yeah.
Next one. One of the things I love about Matt is that he's not afraid to do just weird things. But then I saw this one and thought, oh my god, he's gone too far.
Oh no.
Nick, maybe?
I think the
sounds
person
like
who
you,
said
Sean.
this, their name starts with an S.
I actually remember saying that because I do always say that
yeah,
weird
there it
Matt is best Matt.
What
Yeah,
was
that
in
is
reference
true.
to? Like what episode was that? I'm just
That's
curious.
episode 36.
Oh, that's a while back.
That is a ways
That's
back.
got to be like Carcosa, right?
Yeah.
Or intro to TFA, early TFA.
Interesting.
Oh, you know what it probably was? It was probably the dream sequence.
That
That would have been right around that time.
Yeah,
Yes.
that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Next one. What? No. That's... No. Decipher bad.
Just gotta be Nick.
Nick.
Yeah. Okay. This one's particularly good. This is from episode 5.
Wow.
Oh, jeez.
So
If
it's
you
not
come up-
Scott.
If you come up with another tentacle pun, I'm quitting.
Nick.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that person was talking to you.
I mean, based on the evidence we have,
Right.
it's Tom, right? 'Cause he did.
Yeah,
he
because
did,
he
in
did
fact,
quit.
leave.
Came up with
That was
another
one
tentacle
too many
pun.
tentacle puns.
Oh,
I'm gonna
no.
say that's Nick again.
I think it's Nick talking
That-
to Sean.
That sounds very much like something Nick would say to me. It is Nick. I don't know if he was saying it to me, but I'm guessing that's probably
Yeah,
true.
probably. Was.
Probably.
All right, episode 38. Finn running around as part of the woodwind section.
What?
That's Sean. That's Sean for sure. You played woodwinds, didn't you, in band?
No, I played trombone for like a semester in 6th grade.
Oh.
That's a Nick. That's a Nick.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. I know it wasn't me.
All right, next one from episode 38. Oh, wow. That's not a Google search I was expecting to initiate tonight.
Sean.
Yup.
Yeah. Definitely Sean.
Episode 42. Guess I'm writing the fanfic this time.
Guess I already.
I think Nick?
That's a Scott. That's a Scott.
What? I don't
Episode,
remember this.
episode 44. Possibly some light cackling from the haunted clown underneath the staircase.
That sounds like an Ian to me.
What the fuck? What was that even about? That was me.
Was that? Oh, Sean.
Yeah, that was me. I don't remember saying it.
Was that referencing like It? Like the movie?
That would have been right around the time that came out, I think. So, probably. Episode 44. Give us your money, but don't tell anyone. That's a Nick.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Where's the next one? I got to do a voice here. Where is it? Where's the leader?
Well, since you're doing the voice, I'm gonna say it's Sean.
I mean, I'm responsible for most weird, bad voices on the podcast, I assume, right? Also, episode 44. What is this? A box for ants?
Me?
That's an Ian.
What?
Yeah, that makes sense with how often I reference Zoolander in daily life. So.
All right.
And then last one from this round, episode 44. It personally insults me. Your chaos bag.
Nick?
I think that's kind of a Sean.
That was an Ian.
Oh,
That's oddly combative for Ian.
yeah. What was I talking about?
The world will never know. All right, so I'm kind of hand-picking a little bit from everyone's here. We actually got a very good turnout for this, so thanks everyone who threw in their quotes. I'm sorry if I'm not reading the one you were hoping I was going to read. Episode 26, don't try telling that to a spelunker.
Ooh.
This is an unknown. Before you go and guess, Kevin did not provide us the... I'm going to guess...
Spelunker.
I'm going to guess that's an Ian. That's where my money would go.
I do like talking about spelunkers.
I want to say that's either Ian or me.
Oh, the world will never know. Episode 35. Hey, man, can you take care of the rats and I'll dreams you real deep?
Me?
I have no idea.
That's an Ian.
What?
Ian!
What am I talking about?
Every time it's an
You're
Ian
on
quote,
fire.
Ian's like, "What?"
I am the most shocked every time. I have no recollection of any of these.
Right on. Let's see here.
Dreams you real deep.
Okay, we got some good ones here. Took a gun from his ass so fast. Is a thing apparently that we said.
It's okay.
I don't want to know.
Yeah. Let's see here. If you die in Canada, you die in real life.
That's Nick. Nick.
That's spectacular.
Was that Nick?
No, actually, these ones were not cited. I believe that one to be Nick, though. I believe that one.
Yeah. I thoroughly remember that point.
I also think I know who this next one is. I'm a costume whore. Give me that one in pink, even though I won't wear it.
That has to be Sean.
Pretty sure I've said that before. Oh god, these next ones. They're great. I'm gonna skip them for Matt's sake.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's hear from Mythos Bonus 3. At 17, I was curled up at the feet of my parents' bed.
Sean, right?
To my shame, I know that story because it's mine.
Nice.
Let's see here. Episode 37. I'm surprised Nick convinced them to put the striptease in there.
Nick. I'm going to say
like an
Sean.
That's a Scott. God, we are really bad at this.
oh.
We are
way off.
really
We're
damn bad at
batting
this.
like...
I think rolling random chance would have yielded better results at this
I
point.
think
probably.
so.
All right. Also, episode 37. Caught slightly more flat-footed, or bow-legged, I suppose, if the dick punch is the threat.
I'm going to say Sean for that one.
Yep.
Can I read the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, I like this one. All right. Someone said on episode 33, it sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher being fed through a wood chipper.
Nick.
I think that was a Scott original.
That was a Scott original. A Scott joint.
Oh.
And I remember that. I remember
Referring
that
to.
because that one hurt me a little bit because that was the night that I was trying to surprise everyone with the first Lola song.
Oh,
And
that's
we had
right.
major
yeah.
technical difficulties and it failed and like the timing was all wrong. And then at
That's
the end of it, Scott was like, it sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher being fed through a wood chipper. And I'm like, oh, that's really funny, but oh,
Harsh.
God, I'm funny.
Got him.
Episode 33. Curtain call was a pillowcase of doorknobs to the face.
Yep. Can confirm.
Very accurate. I'm not sure who said it.
That's a Nick.
Checks out.
Episode 38. Person 1. I'll always take the bang personally, but that's just a personal preference. Person 2. Well, you just go to sleep at the end of it, don't you? Person 1. Yeah, collapse from exhaustion. What the hell were we talking
Out of
about?
context, very different. what you were
Nick
talking
and
about, I think.
Nick and Sean, I'm gonna say.
Nick and Ian.
Oh,
Nick and Ian. So I'll give you half points on that. All right. So, as is our custom for the Orbits contest, thank you everyone for entering. Does everyone want to pick a favorite, and we'll roll among them?
Oh God, I can't even remember them.
Yeah, you can scroll down to the bottom of the document here.
Okay.
And there are a few. Oh God, there are a few that we're gonna come back to on an episode that Matt's not here because of
yeah.
My delicate ears. Yeah.
Okay.
I gotta go. If you die in Canada, then you die in real life.
That is pretty good. Just for sheer surrealness, I'm gonna go with possibly some light cackling from the haunted clown underneath the staircase.
That's a good one.
Okay.
I think we need Matt to pick one because we always pick 4, and Nick isn't here.
I think I have to pick the Charlie Brown's teacher one.
Sure.
Yeah.
That one gave me the giggles.
I'm gonna go with "You're not just a receptacle here, Sean. Finish him."
That is a good one.
It's right at the top.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so on the docket here we have, well, everyone knows where they're at, so I'm just gonna do 1 through 4 from the top. And sorry, I threw the die across the room because my hand was
It's gone.
I'm bad with dice. Who knew? 3.
What if you die in Canada? You die in real life.
So Chris, you.
That is a worthy winner.
And this is Chris Yu of the board, Chris Yu, correct?
Yes.
I think.
Yep. It is. Yep.
Apologies if I'm not seeing that correctly. But all right, so Chris, you're gonna get the Arbits, Doom, and Clue tokens. So we'll be sending all of the Arbits tokens out shortly. Thank you to everyone who won at the beginning of this whole cycle for your patience. Just, one trip to the post office is so much
better
less
than
painful. 5. Yes, than 5. And a big thank you as well to Miles, who runs and makes Arbits, for giving us the prize support. This has been a fun series of contests to do. And if you haven't checked out the Arbits store yet, definitely do so. The resource tokens are up, and they are my favorite resource tokens on the aftermarket right now. So there's just so much good game bling out there for this game. Great support.
Can confirm.
Excellent. All right, so this was actually something Nick handed off to me, so I apologize, Nick, if I'm not going to do this justice here, but friend of the show, Nathan, is hosting an Arkham Horror Beneath the Waves event in Portland, Oregon, Sunday, October 27th from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's going to be at Guardian Games in Portland. And so there's a fair few things that he's got listed in the event schedule here. I'll just kind of run over some of the highlights that caught my eye. So they're doing an Iron Man challenge. They're doing a Depths of Yacht challenge. Real original, guys. Real original. Return 2 scenarios. People are going to have some fan scenarios. They're going to be doing trivia during the lunch break. Possible quiz from Drawn to the Flame. Possible tokens and other prize support to give away. Fun story featuring Arkham Horror Beneath the Waves by Brian Sandberg, i.e. Right of Seeking. So it sounds like it's going to be a really fun event. So if you're in the Portland, Oregon area, go ahead and check that out at Guardian Games. And I assume you can get in contact with Nathan. There is a Facebook event that we'll share that link in our show notes if anyone doesn't have a better way to get a hold of that event.
And is this Nathan from the Great Old Ones Gaming podcast?
I believe that to be the case.
Yeah. And he's the one who lives in a dollhouse or something, right? Like, he has whenever you see pictures on the Facebook group of someone who has a scenario laid out and it's just dollhouse stuff, like lamps and cars and roads and chairs, and man, his setups are
plants.
Yeah.
And he sets up dioramas. I don't know how he actually plays in them.
He really likes to pull everyone into the scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I see. It seems like
it's like if Arkham Horror LTG and Warhammer 40K had a baby.
Yeah, it's some low-key Warhammer energy going on there, but he does good work and provides very good pictures for the Facebook group, so go check that out.
Yeah.
All right, now let's move to the news.
Okay, so our news this time around was a a big bombshell, which was the reveal of the last 2 investigators from the Dream Eaters that we haven't seen more than meets the eye. So for the sake of getting to the meat of our episode, we're going to go more in depth with this article next time around and do our usual, like, raking over these investigators within the inch of their life and talking about them in detail. For now, what we know is that Tommy Muldoon is going to be the Guardian and Patrice Hathaway is going to be the Survivor, which I'm hype about. That was one of the investigators I was looking forward to. Since we do have Matt here, though, is there anything you want to say about Patrice or Tommy, Matt?
Well, I can't say... Sorry,
sure. No, go ahead.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say too much because obviously
Sure.
we did not share their deck building restrictions or
Yes.
options, and obviously there's going to be other cards in the Dream Eaters box and cycle that will certainly expand upon what they can do. But suffice it to say, they're both really interesting investigators to play. They have very different play styles. For Tommy, I wanted to lean into this idea of like the kind of, I guess, like Paladin-esque character. He's tanking for other players, and he's able to really take a lot of hits, and then hopefully with Becky dish them back out. So he's one of my favorites. Honestly, he's like my favorite Guardian now. He's a lot of fun to play, especially in a group setting. A lot of the Guardian cards in this cycle are going to be a bit more teamwork oriented. Like a group setting.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really funny is when I read the Becky card, I read Becky and I started reading the card and kind of skipped over the traits and the icons and stuff. And it's like, uses 2 ammo. I'm like, that's weird, an ally with 2 ammo? and then got to the bottom, like, why does she take up 2? Oh,
the subtitle says it's a custom Marlin model. Like,
well, and then, like, RTFC. Skip past that. I know.
That's
awesome. I looked at the art, I'm like, man, that kind of looks like a dude, actually. Because I thought I was talking to the... Like, oh, God.
That's great.
It was terrible. I'm bad at RTFC.
At least any of the flavor portions, Scott's just like, nope.
Yeah.
Skip right over that.
Yeah. And then as far as Patrice is concerned, I'm sure...
You mean Red Aristor?
Right, yes, I was going to say, if you're a veteran Lord of the Rings player, you'll know that Aristor is one of my favorite heroes that I've designed, so it was really only a matter of time before I made Aristor again, which Brad's also very happy about.
Yes.
It's his favorite character in Lord of the Rings, but it really fit well into the Survivor archetype, because there's a lot of cards in the Forgotten Age, for example, that you can like play from your discard pile and stuff like that, so there's a lot of cool tricks you can do.
When, at least from what I've seen, and I've been a little detached, but from what I've seen in the community, there are a lot of people who are really reticent to think that this is a good ability.
Trust me, it's good.
A lot of people's gut reaction was, I don't know. Guys, she's going to be really good.
Yeah. It's funny because I've seen that, and then all the Lord of the Rings players are like, no, it's going to be good.
Yep.
Just from that Aristor experience.
I mean, especially in this game when you can commit icons from your hand. Like in Lord of the Rings, you cannot do that.
And your deck recycles.
Right.
It's like one of the problems in Lord of the Rings when you run an Aristor deck is if you run out of deck, you're out of deck.
Yeah, you're just done.
Yeah, because usually like building Aristor, like you'd find ways to build it so that you could usually dump your hand, but in this game it's pretty much guaranteed you'll be able to find uses for everything.
And Survivor has such a low cost curve, right? Like, so you pack your deck full of Survivor cards, and the recycling of the deck costs you 1 horror. So if you include 1 keepsake, you're good, because you'll see the keepsake. It's free to play. Yeah, I am just.
So you do have to be aware of weaknesses, though.
Yeah.
Especially
certain weaknesses.
Patrice standalone is probably a bad idea.
49 XP Patrice. Let's go.
I suppose if she's Survivor, you can run it low, but still
standalone you won't get doomed.
Yeah, there's at least that.
And I think she's a 19 XP, maybe 9
at most. I'd say.
Yeah.
I'd probably run her 9. I think, but yeah.
49.
What would you put? You could probably put 30 Survivor cards with XP, and it still wouldn't be for 49 experience.
So I'm at 34 XP.
So what you're saying is 49. You can throw a key in there for 10 XP. You can get up there.
I'm gonna put 2 scrappers in there just because
So, okay, I know we're not deep diving on this right now,
Sure.
but I do want to bring up her weakness because this might be my favorite signature weakness that exists now.
Yeah, it's actually my favorite part of her design, which is weird to say, but it's so flavorful.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just gonna read it. Here we go.
Sure, go for it.
Watcher from another dimension is an enemy weakness, 5 health, 5 combat. Man, you think I've done this before?
Right.
2 health, 5 evade. Monster and extra dimensional traits: peril, hidden, and hunter. Just okay, we'll get there. Revelation: secretly add this enemy to your hand. You may fight or evade this enemy while it is in your hand, as if it were at your location. And if you succeed, discard it from your hand. If you fail, spawn it engaged with you. Enforced: when your deck runs out of cards, if this enemy is in your hand, it attacks you. It does 3 damage. So, I believe I'm on record saying Weird Matt is best Matt.
Yes, that is true.
I'm never not weird, Sean. That's my secret. I'm always
That's
weird.
my secret cap. But there's a lot going on here, but I just love the idea that you draw this enemy and it's the Watcher from another dimension, and in the real world, here it is. It's just gonna be watching you from the back of your hand,
Yeah.
just like, ooh, here I am.
You can't tell anyone. You're just like,
blocking your card draw.
I drew a card.
And
Then you're
she's
just
gonna be-
randomly committing stuff to fight something that's invisible to
Yeah,
everyone
it's cool
else.
because Patrice's whole backstory, this entity, it's clearly like a thing, right? Like it's clearly an entity that's watching her, that like hears her music. So it had to be an enemy, but I didn't want it to just spawn, right? Like it's not in the world.
not in the world.
Yeah. It's, from another dimension.
Yeah.
So this
the hand dimension.
right. So as soon as I hit upon the idea of the idea that an enemy could be hidden, it was like immediate, like instantaneous.
Yeah,
Made perfect sense.
I don't know if this is the theme you were going for, but I like that, like, as this violin player, like, you always picture these scenes from movies where the violin player is, like, getting caught up in the music and, like, just going off. And then kind of, to me, that's, like, you're drawing these cards, like, improvising, like, hitting these notes, which is playing these cards, and then suddenly the Watcher is there. Like, you've attracted his attention, and that's what comes in. And, like, yeah. I think it all works really well to get that flavor across. And it's like such an abstract thing, this whole like Aerostore like ability, like dumping your hand, bringing it in. But as you play it, I think it gets across that feel.
I think my favorite moment in playtesting with Patrice was someone using active desperation to throw their violin through another dimension to watch her.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's very great.
Yeah, 5 is a +2. It could work.
Yep.
That's what she's just playing her concert and just throws her violin and at nothing. Yeah.
So one kind of general design question. Stats. And the kind of total stats. There's kind of it's kind of tight, but it's a little rough total stat
12.
Sure.
sum that we're used to.
Yeah.
How is it that you decide when and where you're going to kind of violate from? Like, it's not a strict norm, but there is kind of a...
I mean, in general, it's going to add up to 12, right? Because that's like the standard. And whenever that rule is broken, it's usually because their ability or something about the character warrants it, really. Like for Preston, it's like, yeah, because he always has all the money. You know what I mean? For Calvin, it was just because his stats are super variable and change from moment to moment. For Patrice, it was because you always have a hand of icons to commit to every test. So your stats are actually higher than they would suggest here. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like 4-2-2-2 is actually pretty generous considering how often she can just commit cards to tests.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Because I think if you build her right with wild icons and double iconed cards, like most tests might actually be pretty easy.
Yeah, like at 4 at minimum for a lot of cases if you have just one double icon card for those tests. Yeah.
Yeah. And I assume if you just wild cards or wild icon cards are going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're going to see them too. That's the thing. Like she is so exciting to me, and I love the Survivor class, how it's just like each, like all the Seekers kind of play similarly for the most part, right? You get clues. Guardians play...
Right, you get clues.
Except for Joe Diamond.
Right. But, I mean, he's still good at getting clues, right? And, like, Guardian, you mostly kill stuff, except for Carolyn. Mystics, it's like, well, put all your eggs in one basket. But Survivor, it's like, okay, well, you have a dog, and you discard cards to redraw, and you get 5 cards every turn, and you are 0, but you take more damage and get better. Like, Survivor's just I have a cool idea for an investigator, but it doesn't fit anything.
But
I'm gonna
it's
put it over
weird.
here in Survivor.
Right. Yeah, Survivor's definitely the wild card. Like they're
Yeah, and that's what I love about Survivor
is very
class.
different.
Yeah, they're awesome. I love Survivors.
In Scott's rundown of the classes, I was expecting him to drop an insult to rogues, and the fact that he just skipped over them was somehow a worse insult.
Yep, I was about to say everyone forgets about Rogue always, so it's really appropriate.
That's awesome.
It's like
Rogue
it's
to
not
me
even
is-
worth my time.
Rogue to me is get money, play events. That's what Rogue to me is.
Yeah.
Fair.
Get money, play events, leverage agility.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're
They're
the
the
Hufflepuff.
Hufflepuffs of Miskatonic University.
Hey, hold on.
Potato!
You guys can make fun of any of my card designs. You do not make fun of Hufflepuffs.
Whoa. All right,
man.
throwing down.
Lines have been
Hufflepuffs
drawn.
are awesome. Anyway,
I'm apparently Ravenclaw. So
I mean, I'm a Slytherin, so
Yeah,
whatever.
I'm like
Yeah.
Slitherclaw.
I think last time I think I mentioned that I was like Slitherpuff.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's like,
Slitherpuff.
what? That sounds weird.
Apparently we talk about Harry Potter when Matt comes on.
I took the Pottermore
It's a
test,
thing.
and they were like, "Oh yeah, you're Slytherin, 100%." And I was like,
yeah.
Screw the Pottermore test. It gave me a cat Patronus. I have nothing against cats, but it's like I'm so
like
far
cat
from being a
Patronus.
cat person.
I got like a stallion Patronus. And I
You
was like,
own a
really?
cat? I've never owned a cat. I have no affinity for cats.
like 9
I'm fine
cats.
with cats.
I love cats.
I know.
Jeff says in the chat, survivors are also the least associated with a particular stat.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
That is by design.
Their stat is the survivability stat.
Yep.
They are the wild
I would almost
card.
argue their stat is their hand. Sometimes.
So
60% of the time? I see, that's the thing. You can't even classify them.
it's more just that their stat is like every survivor has a different specialization. Right? Like
Yeah.
for Wendy, it's like will and agility. For Pete, it's like combat and intellect. For Yorick, it's combat. So they're all
combat and assets.
well, yeah. But
That asset stat,
The asset
really
stat.
for Rita, it's agility and agility.
Yeah.
agility.
And more agility. Calvin,
Yeah.
it's
Agility.
pain and torment.
Calvin, it's everything.
Network 57, their main trait is that they fail every scenario but survive the campaign.
That's not
untrue.
far.
It's not untrue at all.
That's not far off. Oh, I did it because I didn't say in my update. So I ran 4 campaigns through TCU originally. I was successful in only one of them. 1 out of 4 had a campaign victory, and it was solo Rita. That was the victory. Yep.
Picture
And-
didn't happen.
There were quite a few, and it might have been one of the lowest total XP campaigns I've ever had. And there were a lot of campaigns where she just got to the end, did not get XP, and just won. But she won the campaign. That was that's the
all that
most
matters.
survivory campaign I've ever had, because she just
No.
she just did what she had to do to make it to the end of each scenario, and that's
She's
it.
literally
Now, you-
the final girl.
Yep.
You say
It totally
survive.
was.
You say that Rita won, but I'm going to argue that probably Track Shoes won.
It was a factor. It was a factor.
Yeah, I played a solo Track Shoes deck.
Solo track shoes. That's like
Thalen's boots.
Nate's solo Thalen.
Yep.
Yeah, we need more footwear.
Equally as unbelievable.
Right.
It happened. It outperformed some
So-
big hitters. Yep.
So I keep hearing. We need some evidence stuff.
The evidence is moving on now.
Yeah, I was about to say. All right, so let's hop into our main topic for the day. Ian, unless you had something else. All right, cool.
That's it.
So obviously, spoiler alert for The Circle Undone, because we're going to hop into it here. So, just to start off, let's ask the easy questions. So where did the idea for this kind of setting story come from, and kind of what were some of the inspirations that you pulled from?
Sure. So after Forgotten Age, obviously, I think it was pretty important that we returned back to Arkham and had not just returned back to Arkham, but also like had an entire cycle in Arkham. Because since Night of the Zealot, we had never done an entire cycle that's only set in Arkham, and there's so much to explore within Arkham. So that was like part one, right? Was we really wanted to set the entire thing within Arkham 100%. And part of that was I wanted to explore some of Arkham's past. And obviously it has a history of witchcraft. It's got the Silver Twilight Lodge, which has like a storied past inside Arkham. Like it's been there, since the town's inception, basically. And really kind of delve into what makes Arkham an interesting location. And a lot of that is Lovecraft always uses the word haunted a lot. Like it's haunted not just like by literal ghosts, but also just haunted by stories and haunted by the occult, right? It's a very old and very bloody town.
It has a dark history.
Yes.
Or no, wait, dark secrets, dark past? What was the country?
It has centuries of secrets.
That's the one!
Hey-o!
Yeah, nailed it.
And an evil past.
Okay.
That's the one you were thinking of.
I was conflating. Okay, there you go.
So yeah, those were kind of the notes that we wanted to hit on.
So obviously Witch House was a part of the whole inspiration.
Right.
What kind of non-Lovecraft stuff kind of informed the way the story took place?
I think just ghost stories in general. Like, I mean, there's too many to really mention, but like ghost stories are so ingrained in like pop culture now. All
right, side quest. What scary stories scared you most as a kid?
What scary stories scared me most as a kid?
Goosebumps.
You know what? Stories didn't really scare me. It was video games.
Oh,
like Silent
okay.
Hill was like, for
You had
sure.
to have a little bit of skin in it?
Yeah, and in fact, Silent Hill, I kind of drew on a little bit with the spectral realm.
Sure.
Is a little bit drawn from just the idea that there could be like, here's the normal world, and then here's like this hellish version of the world. But we didn't want to make a statement that like this is what is always the case in Arkham. So
Right.
it was more localized around the Spectral Watcher and that whole plot.
And okay.
It's not that there's like de facto an afterlife in like the Arkham IP. It's just that like this thing that was happening, it was causing spirits to appear and become hostile and that sort of thing.
Am I reaching by saying that maybe a little bit of Stranger Things got inspired in there?
You're certainly not wrong. Yeah, I mean, just like gaming in general has had a lot of if you look at like Soul Reaver and Legend of Zelda, and there's so many games that I could point to that have like, the normal version and then the dark version or that sort of thing. So it's kind of not any one thing that I can point to that was an inspiration, but more just all of it combined. But I really loved that we are able to get like multiple versions of every location and like different flavor text on each of them and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think the location art, particularly with the spectral locations, that was really cool to see that there was actually a visual difference.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
so often,
yeah.
I mean, a lot of times there won't be in the art because that's a lot more assets to deal with.
It's an extra 6 to 7 art pieces to commission for any particular scenario. So yeah,
excellent.
A lot of work goes into that.
So guys, I'm gonna do my best not to just hog the conversation like I normally do here. So you hop in whenever you feel like it.
Okay.
We can fix it in post.
We fix it in post by like having Scott answer or ask questions that don't get answered.
Yeah.
You just edit in that question, and I ignore
What's your
him.
favorite breed of banana?
So I think one thing I'm interested in is, we kind of had the two factions warring against each other, and you kind of caught in the middle and having to choose sides from time to time.
Right.
Was there any particular feel or spin you were trying to give, the Lodge or the Coven, or how was it to kind of balance them and not make one more attractive than the other?
Right.
Or, more right or wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it was very important to me that both factions feel like they're either they're both in the wrong or they're both sort of in the right, or like neither of them are really villains, or like they're both antagonists but not necessarily villainous.
Sure.
They're not necessarily sinister in their intentions.
Well, no one thinks
They just
themselves
have-
the villain, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's what makes a villain good. So for the Lodge, for example, they have lofty goals. They have goals that are good for humanity. They are, essentially aligned against the Ancient Ones, right? They're just willing to go far and beyond what a normal person would do to achieve those goals. And the witches, to an extent, are in the same boat. They just want knowledge. They just want the information that their ancestors had. And they're willing to beseech spirits that, should not have been called to this realm to do that. So really, we're just caught in the middle saying, like, no, everyone stop. But it's only because of what they did that, the entire plot of the TCU campaign gets kicked off. And who knows if our meddling made things better or worse, right? Yeah. So I wanted that sort of, not lesson, but like message to come across that, like, no one in this particular campaign is like super evil. And they are aligned against each other, but they both have good points. So I could see any possible argument for siding with one, the other, or neither, and it feeling like logical.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that also works for the particular ancient one for this cycle, Azathoth, who's just like, compared to all the other ones, is just this force of nature, doesn't really have even a consciousness that we can understand. Just like its goal is just to eat if it awakens. And so I think it's more about like, how does everyone else react to that coming versus like the kind of some of the antagonists we've seen in the other cycles that are like the ancient one is more active in bringing about what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, like, very few of the ancient ones have a motivation that can be deciphered.
Right.
But of all of them, Azathoth is by far the one that has really, like, no motivation whatsoever. It's just a primordial force that it's not even, like, aware of what it's doing. And because of that, I wanted the villainousness, the antagonism to come from these characters and not from the forces of the mythos.
Right. This is kind of jumping out of the order of our questions, but it came to my head, so I want to ask it before I forget. The opening of the whole cycle after the prologue, that is kind of enigma, like you're doing this fortune reading with Anna Caslow and you suddenly awaken in the forest, like and I don't think it's ever really explained like what brought you there or kind of what happened. Now, is this one of the patented Matt Newman things where you wanted it to be kind of ambiguous and able to be read in a few different ways, like what exactly was happening there? How did you get brought into this?
There's definitely it's definitely like suggested or inferred in the later half when you I think when you meet Anna again is when this is suggested, but it's kind of inferred that like she's the one who put you there because she knew what was going to happen and she knew that your involvement would potentially put a stop to it.
She was the Strange to our Stark.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. So
I like
because
that.
of like maybe she hypnotized you and made you end up, because it's during the reading that's like she's like holding up the tower card and you're fixated on the tower card.
Yeah,
everything around you is kind of getting warped and then you fall asleep and wake up. So yeah,
nice. I really like that particular piece of text. Like, it's so cinematic to me. Like, I can see that scene, how it would be filmed, like with just zooming in on that card and everything falls away except for the thunder, and then they're there at that spot. So anyway,
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad that that shone through, because that's exactly what I was seeing in my mind's eye when I was writing it.
Going back to the Lodge versus the Coven, when I was playing, I kind of got this feeling that the Coven were, I'm going to use a lot of air quotes here, which is unfortunate because no one can see me, but the Coven are strange people doing good things, quote good, and the Lodge are good people doing strange things. How is it that you balance those two factions to not make either of them the villain?
I think it has to do with like their motivations, right? Like at the end of like scenario 7, when you confront whoever the bad person is in that scenario, it's pretty clear from their reaction that they didn't want any of that to happen. Like, they didn't want to awaken Azathoth and potentially end the universe. That was like not even remotely close to their goals. And so I think that's like a big part of it. Like the traditional Arkham cult thing is we're trying to summon the Ancient One, right? Or we're trying to become so close to the Ancient One that we ascend to Ancient One status ourselves, or whatever thing they're trying to do. It's very clearly like, that's a bad, don't do that. In this case, it's like the goals that they were trying to achieve weren't necessarily what was bad. It was the methods that they were using to do that, and the side effects, the consequences that they weren't really paying attention to at the time. And also being, so roped up in their own conflict between each other that they didn't come together and just try to stop it themselves. Right? Like, they could have, if the Lodge had just cooperated with the Coven or vice versa, they could have maybe shared the secrets of Azathoth and, learned all of the information that they wanted to learn without doing the bad. But they didn't, so here we are. Right?
But they did the bad.
In their arrogance.
It's funny that you mentioned all these different people like trying to get close to Elder God status or awaken them or become them. And in this campaign, it's more like, shh, the baby's sleeping. Just keep him asleep.
Yeah, don't wake daddy like the old board game.
Not?
Don't wake daddy.
Don't wake Azzy.
Don't wake Azathoth.
That's the nickname for Azathoth. Azzy.
So
yeah, I think it's a kind of a classic, like Arkham Mythos type story, and that both of the factions they're the same, and that they're both seeking after knowledge in order to fight bad things happening. But as happens in the Mythos, like seeking out knowledge generally can have bad results. So I think both factions are trying to walk that line, and they aren't necessarily successful in doing that by the end of the cycle.
Right. They both cross that line just a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And the investigators are the ones who have to kind of reel them back in. Because if there's any one force in Arkham that is able to fight the Mythos while retaining their humanity, it's the investigators.
Right.
That's, yeah.
We should start our own club.
There you go.
So Scott, you've got one, the emotion one on here that I'm curious about.
Yeah, so I know from a previous interview on another podcast, and I forget their name. It's the University
Iskatonic
one?
University Radio.
That's the one. Thank you. That you have an emotions board when you create campaigns. I'm not sure for individual scenarios, but basically you describe it as a whiteboard on the wall, and you put up what are the emotions we're trying to hit for this campaign. So what were the emotions on the emotion boards?
Sure. It's worth noting I don't always have an actual physical whiteboard. Sometimes I'm just doing this on my computer or whatever. But it's kind of like storyboarding, except instead of like drawing out the individual scenes, it's more about writing out themes and motifs that you want each thing to hit, right? And to a lesser extent, I do that with scenarios, but really it's more for the campaign as a whole. And for the Circle Undone, it's definitely themes of inevitability and accepting one's fate, accepting one's mortality, their destiny, if such a thing exists, and kind of like coming to terms with the fact that there are some things that you can't change and changing the things that you can. So it's like the Coven and the Lodge are trying to change the things they can't change, right? And the investigators have to be the ones to be like, stop that. You're going to die. It's going to happen. There's nothing you can do to stop that. But what we can do is stop Azathoth from killing everyone else as well. Right. So it's kind of like, so a lot of the themes that we wanted the encounter cards, the scenarios, the story to hit is this theme of inevitability. And it's kind of like coded into almost every encounter set in some way. That's one of the things I'm actually like the most proud of with this cycle was, and if you look at the encounter cards, a lot of them have delayed effects that are like, it's going to come eventually. Well, maybe it won't, but it's
like
just
the treacheries that start to
now.
stack.
Right? Yeah, like Terror in the Night, demonic piping,
Piping.
all of the cards that trigger when the encounter deck runs out of cards, stuff like that. And the witches are kind of like propelling that, So it's all kind of a metaphor for what's going on, which is really cool.
super side note, when you talk about treachery
It's
stacking,
like a normal side note, but super.
yeah,
Got an S on its
super,
chest.
Yeah.
super side note. You talk about treacheries stacking. The idea for that, did that go into, okay, slight spoiler for Return to Dunwich. The card where it's like, if no one has cheated,
Oh, sure.
you know what I'm talking about? Where like someone has to put it in front of them, and then, oh no, Fate of All Fools. Sorry, I'm
You're
confusing the
combining
art,
two
actually.
cards, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Fate of All Fools. I don't know what I'm going for now. I thought Fate of All Fools
Fate of
was
All
in Return
Fools
to
is-
Dunwich.
Fate of All Fools is the one where you put it in front of the first person to draw it is the one who puts it in front of them, and every future copy is going to either hurt that person or put doom on it. And that's kind of, that ties into the like accepting your destiny. Like whoever gets Fate of All Fools is the one who has it. And every future copy is just going to hit that person. So it's kind of like, oh, it's you this time.
You're the
Accept
fool.
it. You know what I mean? It's happening, right? And all you can do is alter your fate, maybe. Perchance.
I really like that in this campaign. It felt like, in addition to the doom stacking up, there was also other trackers stacking up. So whether it be like the Pipers, Fate of All Fools, like there were other clocks.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where you're like, there's doom, and then there's all this other shit that I have to deal with, but I can't deal with. So
Lots of things dragging your attention away, kicking and screaming.
Yeah. And the thing I like about the design of those cards, like Fate of All Fools specifically, but some of the other ones too, is when you draw that first one, you kind of breathe this sigh, like, okay, nothing happened.
Like, Fate
like,
of All Fools
I'm good.
does nothing the turn you draw.
And
dodge that bullet.
Yeah.
And then later on, it just keeps like popping up, and that was actually the card that screwed my Rex and Mark, because I couldn't afford to take direct damage, so I had to put the Doom, and that was the Doom that lost me the campaign.
Wow.
But so those are the kind of like choices and things it brings up. But yeah, it's I don't know, the story's interesting in Circle and Done, because I think we'll end up talking about the ending of the cycle and how it ends, but even though it's a very different story to like True Detective season 1, and very different like story and setting and all that, like I think some of the themes were like similar to me about like inevitability, but the investigators are still kind of holding out this hope through it all at the end of it.
So, we talked a little bit about setting. This is the first one that's throwing it back to Arkham. Was it nice to have to center on Arkham and have to kind of have a bigger campaign than Night of the Zealot? Or does it get nerve-wracking at all when you're kind of dealing with the more established setting within the IP, so you kind of have to get the continuity right, that sort of thing?
It's definitely like, there's pros and cons, of course. On the one hand, it requires a lot more coordination between like the story group for the other games that we're working on and all of the previous games that we've already done, because all of that stuff exists and you can't like, counteract any of it. But at the same time, because all of that material is there and because the story group exists, it's easy for us to do that coordination, and it means that there's a lot of material to draw from, which is nice. When we were doing like Forgotten Age, it's, we have more creative freedom to do whatever, but it also means that you have less inspiration to draw from. So like when I was doing like, for example, The Boundary Beyond, it's like, yeah, we have no material set in Mexico City up until this one scenario. So I literally had to spend like a week researching Mexico City and like finding, what's interesting about it and like that sort of thing.
And
right.
How can we make these past versions of themselves?
Right, yeah. And like what would be here in, ancient Tenochtitlan, like, yeah. So, whereas with Arkham, it's, what's inside the Silver Twilight Lodge? Let me go through, like, the Mansions of Madness scenario that's set inside the Silver Twilight Lodge, and the previous scenarios that we've done dealing with the Silver Twilight Lodge in Mansions, and, like, Arkham Horror 2nd Edition, all of the encounters that are set inside the inner sanctum of the Silver Twilight Lodge. Like, there's so much material to draw inspiration from. So,
do you guys have any repository where that sort of thing is collected, or do you literally have to go like, okay, these are the parts of the games that I would need to analyze to see what we've done here?
We have some materials that we have in the office that can help coordinate that, but also it's primarily the job of myself and the other story group members, Cara Sentinel Dunk and Phil Henry, to kind of coordinate all of that.
Kind of subject matter experts.
Right. So like Cara, for example, worked on that scenario that was set inside the Silver Twilight Lodge. So I just went to her and asked, like, what are some cool locations inside the Inner Sanctum? What are some cool people that could show up? And also drawing on like the Call of Cthulhu LCG that we did before, and had some characters carry over, like Joseph Meyer and August Lindquist, for example, are from that.
Is Meyer how you pronounce it?
I believe so. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but that's how I've pronounced it.
Guys, I'm gonna have to start Dissonant Voices over again.
But I could be wrong. So
it's a name.
I did basic Google research.
That's all anyone can ask of you.
But yeah, like for example, 2 of the locations in For the Greater Good are basically mansions tiles, just done from a different angle.
That makes sense.
We got the same artist and we said, hey, can you do this tile again, but like an actual art piece with someone from the perspective of someone in it? And that's exactly what we got. And it's awesome because now when you play both of them back to back, you're like, oh, that's the same room,
Excellent. I like that synergy.
Speaking of Arkham, there's kind of lots of movers and shakers in Arkham, but we mentioned how Anna Caslow kind of plays a key role. So, like, which came first? Did the idea of having tarot cards come first, or did Anna's role in the story come first, and then that made you think of doing tarot cards?
That's actually a really good question. So I think it started off, I wrote the Soothsayer section, and it wasn't Anna at first. It was just a Soothsayer. And I just thought it would be a cool segue into the themes of the Circle Undone, of like accepting your inevitable fate and stuff like that. And he had that cool moment where you can be like, nah, I don't believe any of this. Haha. It's all hooey. And
humbug.
In my first, my first draft of it, like I said, it was just an unnamed Soothsayer, and in my headcanon, it's the same Soothsayer that's talking in the beginning of Night of the Zealot.
I was wondering about
yes,
that.
It is. Yeah. It is. So that's supposed to be Anna as well.
Nice.
And then it was obvious. Oh, we should just make it Anna because we have this character who already exists in the IP, who is a Soothsayer, and because she deals primarily with tarot cards, that's where that kind of theme came from. After that, and I noticed that we had those tarot art pieces from the Dreamlands expansion to Eldritch Horror, and I thought this is the perfect place to put them in. They deal with the same themes and is already part of the story, so it was like a perfect fit.
How much research did you have to do on tarot reading in order to make that all work?
Believe it or not a lot, because I was really into tarot readings in college and high school. Yeah, so like I can do tarot readings.
What? You were fascinated with cards?
No, so like all of the tarot like quotes that all of the like the story bits that we put like on Twitter and that are on the agendas. I wrote all those basically from memory because it's tarot is like a huge inspiration for me. Like it's always been. I've got like an app on my phone. I draw a tarot card every day and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Almost the entirety of my knowledge on tarot comes from playing the Persona series.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I love the Persona series. So that's, yeah. When I played those games for the first time, I loved it because of the tarot.
Yeah. And the whole Arcana thing they have going on.
For sure.
My experience with tarot is the Circle Undone.
There you go. Well, now you know.
I was aware of a tarot deck, but...
Did you know that tarot originally was a game?
Yes. And it's actually like it has significance like with
Scott,
these.
I know nothing.
I know nothing about tarot, but I know this really obscure thing that no one else does.
I mean, I know nothing about the like tarot started as a game, and then it slowly morphed like essentially kind of into our 52 card deck. Like it has a large influence in that,
right?
And there was like I know that much, but then like tarot as a mystic art, if you will. Like I know nothing of it. I know that there's some sort of Irish cross, and that's one of the ways to read it. Or something.
A Celtic cross. That's actually one of the
Celtic
more
cross.
Like classic traditional readings that you can do. And I think that's the reading that Anna's doing in her art.
Yeah. So is that just the layout of the cards that you deal?
Yeah, and like the meanings ascribed to each of them can be different depending on the position that they're in. So the Celtic cross is a really kind of elaborate one where there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 10-ish cards in play, and they all have different meanings depending on where they are. But you can also just do like a simple 3-card reading representing like past, present, and future, or just a 1-card reading, that sort of thing. But what I like about tarot, I'm a huge tarot tangent here. But what I like about tarot is it's not about like necessarily predicting the future. It's about kind of offering some advice depending on what the cards are revealed. Yeah, at least that's the way that I've always been taught to do tarot readings. It's not about like this is gonna happen to you. It's more like here's a problem, and here are some ways that you might overcome it.
It's a very good way to explain away when things go not as predicted.
Possibly. I mean, that's certainly a jaded interpretation of that. But, yeah.
Well, I drew the jaded card.
Right.
Matt, what was your, like, as a player now, and I realize you have to go through playtesting, everything like that, so
Every now and then.
a lot of... Yeah. Once in a while, I assume you playtest something.
Yeah.
But what was your favorite path to play through TCU as a player? Like what if you were playtesting? What was your like? You would lean towards a certain path just because you found it fun.
So I basically always let the other people at the table decide because I mostly just wanted to gauge their reactions and see what they decided because that was, to me, that is part of the playtesting was like, okay, if 9 out of 10 people are siding with the Coven, then obviously I need to make the Lodge more agreeable, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I never really made that choice ever. But if I were to make the choice, I really like the deceiving the Lodge path. It's hard to pull off, and you have to like jump through all of the hoops to get it right. But if you can like do it all just right, and you get to Union and Dissolution, and you like throw the brazier on the ground, and all the ghosts show up and start eating people, you're like, yeah, I did it. And like no enemies come out. It's great. I love it.
Yeah.
But I also love that if you're deceiving the Lodge and like fail to do it right, then it's like that's like the worst outcome because they knew it, they predicted it, and they're like, "Aha! I knew you weren't on our side all along." And like Joseph Meyer and a bunch of cultists show up and just like destroy you.
Yeah,
yeah, it's so cool.
Did you have a favorite investigator to play through the campaign?
Diana.
Not necessarily. Not. Yeah.
I had to say it like that because Sean's right there.
not in front of Sean.
No, I'm a huge fan of control effects in competitive card games, and to me, that's basically what Diana is. It's like, no. I'm going to counter that.
No, thank you.
Do that. I'm going to do this other thing instead.
I'd rather not.
Yeah, yep.
Not only counter to that, but counter to that, and then draw a card to gain a resource.
Right, yeah. And then do it again next turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And get better at doing it in the future.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also liked Joe's playstyle of kind of being pulled by the nose into different directions. Like, you get the top card of your hunch deck, and you're like, okay, how can I pull that off? And going off and trying to do it, and you feel like a detective with a hunch. You know, you feel like, okay, if I go this way and do this, then I get to play this card, and that's really cool. Yeah.
So while we're on the subject of paths, I think we have to talk about a particular path because it shocked me and a lot of players when I encountered it, which is an early ending to the campaign that's a win ? So
it's a win.
How did that, was it just kind of a natural progression of that path that's where it would end? How did it come about to have that kind of early victory?
So I can't claim 100% ownership on this one. I was playing Arkham 3rd Edition, and Arkham 3rd Edition also has a scenario where the Silver Twilight Lodge is involved, and you can side with them. And if you do, it says the Silver Twilight Lodge wins the scenario. And I loved it so much that I had to add it in. And it ended up working really well because we have that path where you can side with the Lodge, and it's not easy because you have to go through. You have to basically play for the greater good perfectly, right? And join the Inner Council, and you have to have like not ever done anything to deceive them or infer that you're lying, or like you have to help them at every turn.
You also have to be useful to them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But if you manage to do all that, you get that early ending, and I love it for that exact reason.
We've had so many like early defeats.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
You're never going to see that coming. But also, like, I think it proves kind of the point of like the Lodge isn't necessarily all bad, right? You can side with them, and sometimes they...
As long as you keep the hood on.
Right. And sometimes they are a good force for humanity. They're just, if you're willing to make the sacrifices and do the the things that need to
If
get
you're willing
done.
to do the bad.
Yeah, if you're willing to do the bad, as I have said.
If you're willing to do the bad for the greater good.
Right.
Yeah.
The first time I hit that resolution was from my solo Preston build on easy. And I was like, I just want to go like super lodge. And it's like I chose Preston because I'm like, he seems super lodgy, even though Diana is culty, right? I'm like, Preston's a stand-up man. Anyways, when I hit that ending, I was like, are you kidding me? Like,
I just want more story.
My deck was really good, and now it's done. And I'm happy because I won, but I'm also like, there's 2 more scenarios, which I mean, like, I've obviously played the other 2 scenarios.
Right, I mean, you can kind of like, and just like do it over again, but yeah.
But, and
Mix.
I didn't actually with that Preston deck. I played another one, but like, that was a shock to the system. And like, bravo. Like, I thought I had seen or could predict most shocks to the system, if you will, from this game. That one knocked me on my butt. That was,
Yeah, I had one campaign.
More surprises.
I had one campaign with Maria and York that were kind of doing very well, steamrolling through a lot of the scenarios, and they could have had that ending. I had them kind of pass it by and choose to turn away from the lodge. And as I mentioned before, only one campaign was successful, and it wasn't them. So I like the idea that in their kind of decision to turn down the lodge, they actually doomed the whole universe, because Azathoth woke up and devoured the whole universe. So.
Whoopsie doodle.
Yep.
Like you do.
Maybe the Twilight Lodge wasn't so bad.
So do you have a favorite bit of text in the campaign, and can I guess it?
I do, and you can guess it.
Is it the do not read unless you are being hunted part?
I really like that section, but I don't know if that's my absolute favorite.
Okay.
I think my favorite is when you're asking it when you join the inner council, and you're asking Carl Sanford 3 questions
About the beast.
No, and one of the questions is, "Why are you looking at me like that?"
Yeah.
Which is a question that you can only ask if you quote survived the Watcher's embrace in scenario 4.
Which is, I believe, running out the agenda?
Yeah, if the agenda runs out,
wages,
and the Spectre Watcher is like about to claim your life, and then it's gone, and you're like, oh, okay, that's weird. And you write down that you survived the Watcher's embrace, and then you get to the inner council, and Carl Sanford's like, and you're like, why are you looking at me like that? He says, oh, it's nothing. He lied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he actually said, nothing. Don't,
Right. Yeah.
He did that thing where he caught you
Excuse me.
looking, so he stares up at the clock instead,
Straight my tie.
and just like, oh no, I was really checking at the things.
It's also like, I think the only text in the entire it's the only time in the entire story text where Carl Sanford kind of like stutters or stammers.
Where he has an
He
unsure
always
moment.
he always knows the exact right thing to say, but at that moment, even
he's caught off guard.
Is flummoxed. Yeah.
Carl Sanford reminded me a lot, and this is, I know I love to just draw parallels, but the kind of positioning of the Lodge in this campaign reminded me a lot of like Cerberus in Mass Effect 2. So he came off a lot like the Elusive Man.
I can see that. Yeah.
Very...
Like an older, crueler Elusive Man.
Yeah. I read all of his lines in Charlie Sheen's voice.
There you go.
Yeah.
Another line I really liked in the text was, if you're anti-Lodge and for the greater good, and you overhear them at the end, and they go on this long big spiel, and then your investigators are just like, "What's an Azathoth?"
Oh yeah. So that was actually Dan Clark's addition to the story text. Was I originally wrote, "What the hell is Azathoth?" And he was like, it'd be funnier if it was, what the hell is an Azathoth?
Yeah.
You have no, you're just like, what? I love it. Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that text too.
What were your favorite player cards to design, or what were your favorite player cards that came out in the end? Like what were your keystones that you really just loved?
I think just the investigators in general, honestly. That's kind of a cop-out answer because it's not any one particular card.
Super is a cop-out answer,
But I love Preston. I love, like, rolling in the dough Preston. and all of the cards that synergize with that, like Money Talks is one of my favorite cards in that cycle.
Right.
Where you just
And
like,
all the
"Nah, I'm just gonna
favors,
test with money."
just being able to
all of
do
the
stuff.
favors,
The
just
Scrooge
spending lots of
McDuck
money.
Smaug build.
Yep. Well connected
Smaug.
is cool. And I also like the cards that synergize with Diana. Like Deny Existence level 5 is probably my favorite card in the entire cycle.
So good.
If a card has the Paradox trait, it's a pretty good guess that it's one of my favorite cards. Yeah, I think Deny Existence and just like the dichotomy between the level 0, like level 5 versions is really cool.
They're super solid.
Yeah.
Despite the fact I rarely play Deny 5, just because it's hard to get to.
Sure.
Right? Like
Yeah.
what we talked on our stream.
It's an
like,
ask.
It's 5 XP. It's an amazing card.
Anytime you have 5 experience on an event, it can sometimes be hard to justify.
But building decks for Preston, I think that has been some of the most fun I've had for this game in a long time, is figuring Preston out, especially for hard or expert. Like, because he has this ability with the resources and the pumps and stuff, the ability to play all these cards that support him, and how to leverage that to go against the hardest difficulty in the game. And it's just been super fun. And I have a deck like solo Preston on expert, and it's just never take a test.
Yeah,
just
if you
do everything.
If you don't ever pull a token out of the chaos bag, then expert mode doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like you can play this deck on easy or on expert, and it doesn't change.
It doesn't change
because
at
you
all.
just aren't touching the bag. Like
Right.
there's been multiple turns where the bag just sits there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing things, moving resources around. Yeah, like
You've
Preston
never,
has
you've
been.
never played Preston until you've cunning distractioned one enemy,
Yeah,
and you're like, "Well, I'm Preston, so
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
who cares?
gonna
Drop
do
in the
it.
bucket.
yeah. It essentially cost me 1 resource.
right." Yep.
Essentially, yeah.
Do you have a treachery you're particularly proud of?
I think a lot of those treacheries that I mentioned earlier that have that like sort of build up are just my favorites. Like I really love Fate of All Fools, which is also a Destiny reference. So,
Oh, like the Bungie
shout
Destiny?
out- yeah.
Okay.
But like demonic piping and the Piper together are like 2 of my favorite cards in the entire set.
That one.
I
builds
love-
tension. When
Yeah,
you see that second one hop out, you're like, oh god, here we go.
I love the Piper because like somehow managed to design one of the toughest like non mini boss enemies in the game, like 7 health, right, with like a really powerful ability. But because he doesn't show up every game, like if he was just in the deck, I would have had to make him like 4 health or 5 health and like a lot weaker. But because he only shows up after 3 pipings come out, it builds this tension and you're just scared to see him. Like he's just sitting there set aside and you're like, oh god.
It's like the Balrog coming down the hall.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And definitely like if you've read Dirge of Reason and like there's the scene at the end of Dirge of Reason, spoilers, where you know Roland and his crew are doing everything they can to this thing, and it's just like
Unloading everything.
you can't know. It's just like it's unfazed, you know. So I wanted to get that same kind of feeling across.
So now, I didn't realize it at the time because my Lovecraft knowledge is pretty amateur even at this point, but I thought in the Dirge of Reason that monster was a Shoggoth. But the Piper of Azathoth is something different entirely.
Right.
Where does that come from? Is that established in any of the other lore, or is that kind of part of the FFG IP?
It's definitely established in the greater IP.
That's not the piping that was happening in Mountains of Madness, right? That was Shoggoths.
I don't believe it was.
Okay.
I mean, I don't believe it was a Piper of Azathoth. No.
Yeah.
I don't know where the first reference of it was, but it's definitely like in the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath when Randolph is on the winged creature and he's heading to Azathoth's domain, which is where a lot of the last scenarios, locations, and flavor text is pulled from. Is that last sequence in Dream Quest? It mentions the piping of these hideous beasts in the court of Azathoth, like Azathoth's pipers.
Okay.
Yeah. Not Shoggoths.
Okay.
At least as far as I know.
Speaking of enemies, you have a favorite enemy.
Either the Piper or the Spectral Watcher.
Okay.
Yeah. I that's another type of card that was meant to sort of evoke that feeling of inevitability, like this creature that you can't stop. So you have like the Spectral Watcher and Nahab, and like anytime there's a creature that like when it would be defeated, instead it just exhausts. That's like, I think a hallmark of this campaign, right? Or a creature that gets shuffled back into the deck after you defeat it. Like Nahab,
You're just setting it back.
Yeah, it's just like it's gonna come back. Like it's inevitable, and it's just a matter of time. You can only really kind of stall it. So yeah, I really like the Spectral Watcher for that reason, and even the Piper is like that too, because you can draw those 3 demonic pipings again, and now he's back.
Well, and you're leaving BJ out of this whole equation.
No, I mentioned Brown Chicken.
Oh,
yeah. But yeah, he's the same way. Except Brown Chicken's more of a nuisance, right? Like, he shows up and you're like, ugh. You're not like, oh, God.
That's true. Well, maybe you weren't.
I mean, when you look at the art, you're like, oh, God.
That meddlesome familiar art haunts me in my dreams.
I think that's Danny's favorite art piece in the entire cycle. I should shout out to Danny. Danny Schaefer, who's the lead developer for Game of Thrones card game. He designed the Secret Name scenario.
Oh.
So he basically did the design for Brown Chicken and Nahab and like Meddlesome Familiar and all of those cards. He wrote all those art briefs, and just the way it all worked out is ludicrously cruel and awesome.
The swole rats.
The swole rats. I love the swole rats. Yep.
Yeah, that scenario.
We need to have a bonus episode where he just comes on and talks about how much he hates Sean. And
I think my new favorite thing is scenario like that uses rats, and you're like, oh no, rats. Not rats.
Yeah.
Because normally you're like, oh, it's rat. What is rats doing in scenario 3 of this campaign?
Lame. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
So one thing that I had a question about is we've had a fair few kind of like final scenarios that are in some form of untraversable, unknowable setting.
Like you do.
Like, as you do.
Right.
How do you continue to kind of make everyone feel a little bit different? Are you finding it hard at this point?
I wouldn't say I'm finding it hard, but it's definitely... I think that the tone of the campaign helps a lot. But I think that's, I think that's a pretty classic ending to any of these stories, is going to be going to like the above and beyond. Like to me, it would be a little anticlimactic if the final scenario was just like in Arkham walking around the street. And like, oh no, there's like, I don't know. To me, that's the staple ending. I always envisioned each of these campaigns as being like a single game of, or not a single game, but a single like loop of Arkham Horror. Second edition,
okay,
because at the time that's the edition that existed when I started working on this game.
Sure.
Right.
Where it's like, get clues, open gate, go into gate, go in otherworld, do otherworld encounter, leave.
Sure.
Right. So like that's a full loop of that game, and like hopefully Ancient One does not wake up. Sometimes it does fight Ancient One.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the note that I wanted each of these campaigns to hit.
Okay.
And how that's accomplished is kind of different for each of them. So
Sure.
Yeah. As long as the scenarios themselves feel distinct mechanically, like, I'm happy with that.
So now I know, at least in past campaigns, you're a fan of kind of dropping in subtle hints and Easter eggs from time to time. And I don't want you to give all your secrets away, but do you have any threads out there that the player community hasn't picked up on yet, or like if you want to drop us a hint, like, hey, look at this card, and maybe it'll lead you somewhere cool.
Nothing quite that specific, like look at this one card or anything. But the story text that I mentioned earlier about about Carl Sanford, you're asking like, why are you looking at me like that? I'm sure that's a story beat that a lot of people haven't hit because it's very specific, like the things that have to happen for that story beat to happen, and the conclusion to that story beat is, but like far and away one of my favorite twists that like I'm sure like 1% of players will experience. So if you want a fun little story beat to read, go through that path. It's
where does
cool.
Where does that culminate?
Well, do you want me to spoil it?
Probably.
Okay. Spoiler earmuffs.
Spoiler alert,
everyone.
do you want me to read it? I can actually read it.
Oh, sure.
It's one of the epilogues. Yeah. So, all right, spoiler alert for this particular story path. So, you have to have in Wages of Sin, quote, survived the Watcher's embrace, which only happens if you run the agenda out. Then you have to go through Further Greater Good and join the inner circle, and then ask Carl Sanford, why are you looking at me? Then you have to beat the campaign. And if you do all that stuff, you read this. Anna regards you calmly as you enter. As always, her prescience is disconcerting, but by now you've gotten used to it. I've been expecting you for some time, she admits. I suppose you have some questions for me. Very well, ask away, though I imagine that by now you must know the answer. She neither offers you a seat nor a drink. You begin to describe your situation, though the truth of your condition is plain to see for anyone with her gifts, and few else. You had hoped for another explanation, any explanation at all, but it was only a desperate clinging to hope without justification. Anna gives you a pitying grimace and shakes her head. Surely by now you must understand. You've completed your task. Your business here is concluded. Now is time for you to rest and be at peace. Peace? No, you cannot be at peace. There's still so much left for you to do. Cross out the investigators survived the Watcher's embrace in your campaign log.
That's amazing.
Love it. Excellent.
Oh my god.
So yeah, that's I like that epilogue a lot. But also the entire lesson behind the you are being hunted sort of fourth wall breaking bit. I really like that passage as well. It has some personal attachment. I have some personal attachment to that because it really has nothing to do with the story of the Circle Undone beyond the themes of it.
It's more about the game.
It's less about the game and more about life.
Oh, sure.
On Earth as we know it.
Fine, if you're going to get all philosophical.
Whoa.
Yeah.
This got heavy.
The Circle Undone got heavy.
It did. It did.
Yeah.
And you apologized for it, so it's fine.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. This got heavy.
I mean, as I alluded to earlier, I mean, even if you quote unquote win the campaign, someone stand behind being a piper for Azathoth.
Well, that's one ending.
Okay, that's the only ending I've achieved. So
okay. Yeah, there's another way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to reject your fate.
Oh, I see. I see. Yeah.
Well, that's the Rita ending.
Okay. Let's be reasonable here.
Ending, but yeah.
So speaking of rejecting your fate, I rejected to go to GenCon, and my wife went instead. There was some scenario. What was it called? Consternation. No. Sorry, the blob that ate everything.
The blob that ate everything.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So-
you have to say it like that. That's important.
That's what I assume. 1920s radio, right? So how did this idea come about? That was terrible.
So the story goes, and I think I mentioned this in the announcement article for it, but the story goes, I had a completely different scenario for Gen Con planned. And it was a cool one too, but I walked into work one day and Brad turned his desk. Brad, by the way, Brad Endries is one of the lead developers for Keyforge, and Conquest and several other games. And
Rip Conquest. I was an avid Conquest player.
He turned to me and he said, "Yo, Matt, I got a really good idea for a scenario." And I was like, "Cool, lay it on me." He's like, "It's just a huge blob." And I was like, "What?" And he says, "It's a huge blob and it eats everything."
Burying the
but like everything. And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Okay, so the answer to the question, can the blob eat it, is yes." And I was like, "You're gonna have to elaborate." But at the time, I had also been thinking about what if there was a scenario where everyone is fighting one big creature, because that's cool. So it kind of lined up, and about an hour passed, and I couldn't get the idea out of my head. And I turned back to Brad. I'm like, "You're a genius! I figured it out." The audio capture probably just went crazy, but
no, you're good.
It fits so well with this other idea that I had for a giant enemy that all of the investigators are trying to defeat at the same time, because I didn't want it to just be I don't know, what's it going to be, a dragon, a giant blob that can eat everything. That's perfect. So I scrapped the idea that I was working on and I started over completely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you balance designing? Because so many of these standalones are kind of, it seems, meant to be played in larger groups, or at least like 4-player groups, kind of multiplayer focused events.
Yeah.
Do you kind of just surrender to the fact that these are kind of meant for multiplayer? You can play them solo. It's going to be tough. There's some stuff that may or may not work quite as well. Like, or do you really kind of put a focus on making sure that everything kind of is an even experience across the player types?
I mean, we've definitely play tested them at all player counts. Like, that's for sure. I shouldn't say like that. We've focused entirely on multiplayer, but to an extent, we explicitly want it to be the best experience when you play it like at a convention with people. So we definitely play tested it the most with the maximum player count. In this case, the maximum player count is infinite, so maybe not that. But we try to lean a little bit more into that than we would with a normal scenario. But we certainly play tested all of them at all player counts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you think this is kind of the sweet spot for how to handle epic multiplayer? Because I know every epic multiplayer is going to have kind of its own spin on what we're all doing.
Right.
But as you said, as opposed to something like Labyrinths, which can be played in very large groups, you're still separating those groups into subgroups.
Right, yeah.
Whereas this, theoretically, could go up to be about as big as you want it to be. So, like, I don't know, what did you learn about epic multiplayer specifically from this one?
I don't think that this is, like, the sweet spot. I will say that I think that there's pros and cons to both approaches, and it really just depended on the scenario that we were trying to make and the experience that we wanted the players to have.
Sure.
With Labyrinths, it was pretty important that there were those 3 groups because the tasks that they each have to do, and like, I don't want to go too much into that for anyone who hasn't played it, but the sort of paradoxes that they have to deal with would not have worked with anything more than that.
Sure.
But for Blob, it was sort of a natural fit. Like, the Blob can eat everything and become huge. So too can the player count, right? So do I think it's the sweet spot for how to handle epic multiplayer? No. I don't know if there is a sweet spot. If there is, I don't know if we've found it. I think that we can keep, evolving the formula and keep doing different things. I think it might have been the sweet spot for how to handle a giant blob that can eat everything.
Sounds about right.
Right.
So, Matt, like I said before, my wife went to GenCon. I did not. But she was, like, texting me, sending me pictures and everything. She got into the first Blob event you guys hosted. I think it was Saturday morning. Is that right?
I believe it was earlier than that.
Would have been Thursday
It was
morning.
either Thursday or Friday.
Oh,
it was Thursday, because there were 4 days. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Whichever one she played with you, Sean.
Yep, Thursday
that was the
morning.
first one.
Thursday
right?
morning.
Yeah, okay. So she was sending me texts, showing me her hand. She sent me a text saying, Sean just lost 6 events. He's very angry.
Sean was very sour.
Sean went for a rage pee.
Yeah. She sent me a text, Sean, get up. Sean got up to get a walk.
Sean got up.
To take a walk. Yeah.
Yup.
He just left. So I want to ask about emotions, because there were obviously a bunch with Sean. But what emotions did you feel when the first group finished with seconds remaining? Because the first group, like, from what I understand, like, they were just, like, everyone was, like, playing cards fast, and like there was damage going down. There were what's the things that people can use?
Countermeasures. Yeah.
Countermeasures.
Countermeasures being spent rapidly.
Yeah. How did you feel, like, in those last few moments?
I think relief, vindication, maybe a little bit, but also just excitement for everyone, because everyone was so happy. Like, it was the noise of everyone cheering was loud enough that it got picked up on some of the other live streams that were going on.
Yeah,
what
nice.
was happening over there, and that's great because honestly, that's what Gen Con Arkham is all about. It's about, like, uniting with everyone around you and having an experience that you can't possibly have just sitting in your dining room at home. You know.
How do you feel as a designer? Like, I feel like this scenario is your baby. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it
no. I for me, it was definitely there was a bit of relief because a lot of people were having a lot of trouble early on, and they were saying things like, how can we possibly defeat this? It's got so much health and stuff like that. And when it happened, I was like, okay, good. Like, it worked as intended, because it's meant to be it ramps up.
There's
the
a
scenario.
cadence to it.
There's a cadence to it, yeah. There's kind of like a rotation. I don't want to. Well, I guess this is a spoilery episode, right? So
Spoiler alert.
there's like a damage phase, like there would be in like a raid boss for an MMO.
Yep.
And every damage phase, you put on the damage,
Get him.
but it ramps up over time. The first damage phase, you maybe put on a little bit, and then you're like, oh my god, we still have like however much health remaining. How are we possibly gonna do
400
this?
left.
Yeah. There's only an hour and a half left. Like, oh god, and then you kind of like learn the pacing. You learn how the scenario is meant to go, and you get faster and faster and faster.
Gonna learn how to dogpile on by the end of it.
Yeah, and nothing lights a fire under players, but like a timer that's about to hit, right? So in that last 30 minutes, you probably get as many turns in as you did the previous.
Just play cards. Just play cards.
Yeah. So so it's cool that it worked out, because that's kind of what we experienced in playtesting, was that exact cadence. And when they won with just seconds to spare, it was like, okay, wow, the balance is like spot on. Awesome, that's great. Because we didn't know how it was going to work out. All of our playtesting was done it's hard to get playtesting for a scenario of this scope.
Yeah.
The most playtesters that we had was like 20 in the 20s.
So what you're saying is it's hard to get 96 people together to playtest?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
it's hard to
yeah.
get 24 people together to playtest. So we weren't 100% sure how 48 players was going to play out. Not to mention 96.
Yeah.
So emotions wise, when the game, Thursday morning, when the game first began, what did you feel in your tummy? Like, what was that like? Were you just super anxious?
It was like GenCon, and I hadn't eaten breakfast.
And I had to skip lunch because it's GenCon.
Yeah, and tired because it's GenCon.
Can you describe to us like the excitement? Like, because I can only assume, like, as a designer, you're like, here is my, I don't know what you want to say, like my delivery to you as players.
Yeah. No,
I hope you like it. Yeah.
It's a bit of worry, right? Like, you never know how people are going to react to any particular scenario. But honestly, it's not that much different from any scenario release when like a pack comes out and I go on, Reddit or Facebook and I read.
But the players are right there,
That's true.
Matt.
Yeah, they're right there.
They'll tell you to their face, "I hate you."
Well, and
I love
not
you.
all of them. I mean, how would they know who I am, right? So there's certainly an element of.
Aren't you famous?
You're funny.
Get the FFG shirt on, so
Yeah, but I could just be like the person running the event. You know what I mean? And there were certainly enough
Right.
people who showed up afterwards who were like, "Oh my god, I didn't realize that you made the scenario.
Oh.
That's really cool." And I'm like, I made the game. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh wow, that's awesome." So I like, you're getting their raw reactions. Is what I'm saying. You're getting like their unfiltered reactions most of the time, which I like. I wouldn't want anyone to filter their reactions around me. Don't tiptoe around me. I can take it. Trust me. I'll be
we
fine.
sure as hell do not.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
X
I'm
gonna
fine.
give it to you.
How different is it design-wise to design epic multiplayer scenario versus a quote-unquote normal standalone scenario? Like something like Labs or Blob versus Rougarou or Carnival.
Right. It's not as different as you might expect. I think the main difference is there's less of a focus on narrative, because in the convention atmosphere, it's just like not gonna happen, right? You're not gonna sit there and read like a 2,000 word story leading up to this scenario. And we try to design it in such a way that the players can sit down and kind of get started in a relatively fast fashion. That's sometimes not easy with how intricate these scenarios can be, like Labyrinths, for example. But like otherwise, it's not that much different from designing a normal scenario, especially since some of these scenarios are designed to be slotted into a campaign, so it can't be like quite that different.
Speaking of slotting scenarios into a campaign, the goodies that you can potentially get out of this one were really cool.
Yes, yeah,
They're good.
they're very good.
They're real good. But before we say anything about those, how you get them is that, you've got this big blob objective going on, and then the scenario drops these little side quests on you that are so tempting. But I'm convinced they're mostly a trap, unless you are actually going after.
It depends. Like, they're powerful enough rewards that they can be really useful in that scenario.
That's true.
Depending on the investigators that you're playing and how much time you have, of course. But, like, some of them can be specifically really good in this scenario. But if you're playing in campaign mode, obviously it's like, that's probably the reason you're playing the scenario, besides just having fun, is to pick up one or two of those rewards, because they're really powerful. The risk, of course, being that if you lose the scenario, the universe gets devoured.
Right. Well,
that's a campaign ender.
I mean, this is the first time I can remember that they were, like, truly, like, side missions. Like, they had their own story text. Like, you've dropped in little things here and there.
Right.
What was kind of, what led up to that being such a kind of more deliberate design?
I think at the beginning, that was a Brad Andrews original. He described it as spinning plates. He wanted to have players spinning all these different plates, right? So you have the big blob to fight, but the scenario is not 100% fight the blob. There's all these other things that you have to manage too. You've got to manage countermeasures. You've got a bunch of scenarios on the board, and they're everywhere. And there's ooze enemies like all over the place.
It's like any kaiju movie.
Right, yeah, exactly. But then just when you think you have a handle on the scenario, just when you're like, okay, I get it. I got the pattern. We throw a curveball, and the curveball is different every time, right? And that's when the plates really start to pile up. And you can ignore them. You can totally ignore them if you want to, but if you don't, then you get something really cool out of it. So that was kind of the inspiration behind that.
So one question I had, just kind of going through, remind me of the treachery that, is it reality?
Reality acid.
Reality, yeah.
Everyone's favorite treachery.
That one was my treachery the second time I played through that
You
one.
did
it was like
own that one.
It was like the only encounter card I drew. That table's really long.
Oh, yeah.
So what made you finally stop adding to it? Did it take sedatives? Did they have to send in orderlies?
Well, I started off with just every possible combination, because that's where you start.
I suppose that is the constraint, isn't it?
Right, yeah. I mean, that's the obvious limit. As I was getting to that point, I was like, okay, that's too many. Like, there's no way. So I started combining certain ones, like skull and 2 to 4 means this, like that sort of thing.
Sure.
And I started combining them in groups based on like how probable they were. Like, there's less 3s and 4s, so 2 to 4 is about equivalent as like -1 almost, that sort of thing. And then it became a space issue. Right, like the booklet can only have so many words, and we had this nice 2-page spread that was unused, so that became the limitation, was 2 pages. Like, how many can we fit in 2 pages? So yeah, that's pretty much how we. And then we kind of cut ones that weren't working very well or that were confusing, because there's a little bit of interpretation with some of them. Even like, what happens when your phone gets devoured? Put it under the blob, I guess. Like, that's all you've been taught to do at this point, so you just go, okay.
Yep.
Okay. The listeners could not see, but I pantomimed putting a phone underneath the blob.
It's true, it happened.
Yeah. So yeah, there were a bunch that did not get used. Easily like a dozen.
What were some of your favorites that made it?
I really like any time that something that wasn't a game component got placed under the blob. Like, that's always a lot of fun. Like or that was a game component, but you're like, what, really? Yeah. Like eating the chaos bag, and then like you have to go get a different chaos bag,
a different container for your tokens.
One that came up a lot in playtesting but never came up at the convention because it was physically impossible at the convention was it eats all of the lights.
Yeah,
it eats all the lights, and everyone pulls out flashlights, and they're like, oh, come on, really? Thanks a lot, Bob. You know what I mean? Like, whoever drew the treachery card.
Nice.
Yeah, eating your house is a great one, because you're like, oh, really?
Go into my collection.
Go get my collection and get the house. Yeah.
How about eating your food? Like, no, I don't think anyone was really like having lunch at the event.
There were a couple people who were like, quick, we got to put 3 damage on the blob because it's going to regurgitate my food. Yeah. I also like this one's like a real harsh one, but when it devours your hand, Not like your hand of cards, but like a hand slot.
I had that happen to my mid.
Yeah. And like there were a couple of people for whom that was like crippling because it was like a flamethrower that they were holding.
That would be rough.
Oh, good for you.
That'll do it.
Yeah, there were a couple there was one that was cut at the very last second because it was a joke. It was never meant to happen. It was if you pulled 2 auto fails. Which is physically impossible, because there's only one autofail in the bag. Until a playtester pointed out that if you're Daisy, it can actually happen.
Yes, it can. Necronomicon's a thing.
And I was like, oh, now I have to remove it, because it was, not something that could possibly be resolved in actual game text.
What was it?
The Blob devours Arkham Horror, the card game.
Matt says you can't play anymore.
You can never play again.
Yep. There was at one point one that was the Blob devours the event organizer. And someone, was like, well, what's going to happen when that gets pulled? And I was like, I guess I'm just going to pantomime like, ah! And like get pulled away by an unseen force and then like
go
not
stack
come
yourself
back.
under that player's
Well,
Blob.
ideally just not come back. Like I'm gone. And like they have to run the event without me. But obviously that couldn't happen at GenCon. Like I'd literally be not doing my job. So I cut that one.
You have to take the picture of Matt that everyone carries around in their wallet and put it under the blob.
Yeah, I wanted to include a lot more joke ones, but there just wasn't space, so I kept the functional ones. Yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
There any that got cut that you wish had made it?
Besides the ones that I already mentioned, no, there's a few
Did
that I
any of them,
cut
like,
for
devour a
legitimately
pet?
good reasons. Huh?
Did any of them like devour a pet?
Oh no, I would never put that in. I have pets. Yeah, no, I think most of the ones that I cut, I think were cut for good reasons. Yeah, I don't think there are too many that I'm like, oh, I missed that one.
So I'm sure there's a lot of enjoyment to be had in running these huge games like 96 person, 48 person. Do you revel in that experience, or is there a little part of you that sometimes wishes you could just like sit down and play?
I like running it. I've when I play RPGs, I tend to be the game master. That's sort of like what I grew up on. I like crafting the narrative and then sort of like watching people interact with it. So I really enjoyed running it. Would it have been nice to sit down and play once or twice? Sure, but I had played it enough times at that point too that
Sure.
I was fine.
How did one of the big things that I loved about the scenario is probably a thing that maybe doesn't get talked about quite as much, but I really like the map mechanic.
Sure,
Reminded me a lot of
Forbidden Island.
Forbidden Island.
Yep.
I was going to say Forbidden Sky, Forbidden Desert, Forbidden Island. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess is that kind of just where it came from? Where did you decide to do something kind of wacky with the map? Or what's the other one? It's the thing that you designed. That was a Lord of the Rings scenario. Temple of the Deceived.
Temple of the Deceived, sure. Yeah. Although that one's more like a get from point A to point B than like a hub sort of thing. But we kind of wanted to get the feeling across that like this is a whole town or like a quarantine zone, and there's a lot of different places to explore. And like everyone's in that same town, and there's different like parts of the town that like you'll notice aside from the research site and the temporary HQ in the crater's obviously always in the same spot every time, and the fungal mound. None of the other locations are unique.
Sure.
So it's this kind of idea that like we went south and found a church, you went like east and found a bridge, but then when you went north you found the church. It's not like the church, it's just like a church. So we're all in the same town, we're all in the same place doing the same stuff, we're just not meeting each other.
Sure.
That's kind of the message that we wanted to get across, I guess. But we both really like the idea that the blob could devour locations. So the map had to be set up in such a way that that's easy to do.
Sure.
Like, and locations aren't being like cut off, right? Like you're not like missing a connection. Like, like if it was, more linear, then that would happen a lot more often.
Sure.
Yeah. So that it just lend itself to that sort of round hub sort of setup.
Excellent. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Plus the crater. Like,
Plus the
it
crater.
made sense to have like a region around a crater, Yeah.
Anyway, I really dug the Blob. I think the first time we played through was... I don't know if it quite beats the first time you play Labyrinths as a big group, because puzzling that out's a lot of fun, but
it's a very different experience.
Yeah,
very different experience. Like the two are both epic multiplayer, but they really can't be compared in terms of like what feelings are going through your mind when you're playing it. I mean, I love how campy it is.
Yeah, it's great.
The movie poster that graphic design made for it.
I was really sad
awesome.
that the movie poster template didn't make it onto the playmat. I would have loved that on the playmat.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, if they ever go to retail with it.
Yeah. That playmat's a lot of fun though. We designed the Blob art as a playmat. Like that's the first time that we ever commissioned art like to be a playmat more than a card.
Nice.
The oversized card that you guys ended up doing was kind of playmat-ish in proportion, so makes sense.
Oh,
yeah.
That oversized card is absolutely beautiful.
It is.
Oh
I love
my
it.
god.
I love it. As if the scenario didn't take up enough space already. Here's a 3 times as big Blob.
That was the sort of thing.
Hashtag worth it.
We played it the first time, got it, sat down the second time, we got everything set up. I'm like, I have no room for this at GenCon. So.
Yeah, especially at GenCon when you're like trapped tight between 2 other groups. Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of elbow space going on.
I do have to shout out to my favorite text in that entire scenario is the flavor text on the oozling.
Yep.
There's 4 different oozling cards, and they each have different flavor text. And if you line them all up, you get the full picture, you get the full story. We had a lot of fun writing that text.
And that one's like the vanilla enemy oozling, right?
Yeah, it's like the I think it's like 2-3-2 or something enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like with these standalone scenarios, you can kind of... I mean, obviously, when you're doing a campaign, everything kind of has to fit together and tell this kind of mythos story. But it seems like with these standalones, you can kind of experiment with the genre a little bit and do these kind of weird things. Like the Blob has this kind of like 50s like sci-fi vibe to it that is cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like that was always part of the design for the standalone scenarios was if the whole game is going to be campaign mode and each cycle is going to have its own sort of theme, there are going to be times where we want to do wacky stuff or like outliers, not necessarily wacky like whoa, but wacky like like a scenario set in Venice. Like when else are we going to get to go to Venice? You know, like that sort of thing. And sometimes they're like happy accidents because we have all of this art. Like we had a bunch of art in Venice laying around because we did a whole Call of Cthulhu LCG set in Venice. That's right. And the same thing for Guardians of the Abyss. We had a ton of Egypt art, but not quite enough for a full cycle, right? So. That's not to say that we won't ever do a cycle in Egypt because there's so much lore in Egypt. But
definitely.
But like that's definitely something that goes into it. And then with the Blob, we commissioned all of it for the most part. There's like a couple pickup pieces, but it's like this is just one where it's like, yeah, we could just do something wacky, just off the walls. Yeah,
it was wacky.
Yes,
it was wild and it was fun.
Certainly that campy feel would not fit in the middle of a normal cycle. Yeah, unless the whole cycle was campy.
Well, and I did also. I loved the embracing the campiness with the marketing of it and the release article
and the flavor text
and all the flavor text.
Yeah.
It felt like it was something kind of ripped out of a campy 40s horror movie.
Yeah. We definitely wanted to get that feeling, but we also kind of wanted it to make sense in the Arkham universe. And like this is the sort of thing that could happen in Arkham, like a weird alien meteor crashing on Earth and hatching a giant monster. That sounds awfully familiar. Right? So yeah, it still has its roots in Arkham. It's not like completely bonkers. Yeah.
I mean, I think the IP is, at least it seems pretty flexible in that regard.
For sure. Yeah.
You still kind of have to respect the continuity a bit, but if you're willing to be a little creative, I mean, you've done some weird things, Matt. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, we've definitely done some things that I hope fans of the Lovecraft IP will, don't mind that we're taking liberties every now and then to do some cool stuff.
I should say so.
I hope so.
I think the testament to the Blob being an amazing scenario is the biggest complaint I've heard is someone saying like, this doesn't feel like, like there's 1920s Arkham. They're like, oh, this feels like 1940s film Arkham. I'm like, is that the biggest issue you have with the scenario? I'm like, that's a pretty good scenario, and I think the way you tried to move
that was
that
also
19
entirely intentional. I take that as a compliment. To be honest.
right, yeah. But at the same time, I feel like I was lucky enough to get my wife to bring the scenario home, so I got to play it. But that 1940s and 1960s film feeling, I still felt like just fit in 1920s Arkham, right? Like in 1920s Arkham, you have a lightning gun.
Yeah,
that still doesn't
I mean,
exist
part
today.
of
So
the Arkham IP is strange science. That's always been part of the Arkham IP. Yeah, I mean, you've got like Migos running around with crazy technology, Yithians running around with crazy technology. You've got heads in jars. You've got like, let's take a spaceship to Pluto. You know, like stuff just happens, and it's it's like this 1920s take on the future that is
retrofuturism,
really anachronistic and weird. So and like time travel and stuff like that. Yeah.
Sean, like you were saying, like, is this retro futurism?
Retro future.
Yeah.
Retro
Either
future
way, like-
retroism.
Yeah.
Some combination of those words. All right, excellent. Well, I think that wraps up our coverage on the Blob. So let's move it on into a little bit of tentacle time. So Matt, I'd like you to go first. What have you been occupying? What little free time you seem to have lately?
Sure.
With
well,
More Arkham. No.
well, actually, so
we've already covered this. He doesn't get to play for fun.
I don't want to do too much self-promotion. I'm here for Arkham, but mostly a lot of what I've been doing lately is I'm writing a novel. I started last November for NaNoWriMo, and at the end of NaNoWriMo, I just kept going with it. It's just
Is that a word I should know?
NaNoWriMo, sorry. No, that's a good point. I should mention that because otherwise people are going to be like, what?
Yeah.
NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. It's November.
Okay.
And the goal is you start on November 1st and you try to write 50,000 words by the end of November. And if you do that, you, quote, win NaNoWriMo. But really the goal is to just get ideas down.
Sure.
Just write. Don't go back and edit. Just write. Write like the wind. And that's a lot. It's like 1,600 words a day, right? And if you miss a day, it's hard to catch up. So it was a fun experience, but also by the end of it, I had this sort of framework for a story that I really liked, so I just kept going with it. And it's now been almost a full year, and I'm on the last chapter right now.
Okay.
So I've just been doing that like every weekend or every time I have free time. Sometimes I'll take a lunch break and I'll just write like crazy. What
can you tell us about it?
I don't want to go too much into it.
Okay.
But if you're interested, I do post excerpts on Twitter every now and then, just for funsies.
Right on.
I did it every day during NaNoWriMo just as a way of sort of as a check on myself to make sure that I kept writing. I was like, I got to keep writing because then I can post my thing on Twitter. And it wasn't for promotion at all. It was really for me.
Just self-motivation.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. But then I just kept going with it. So now every now and then I'll post something on Twitter about it. So
What's your Twitter handle?
Oh, my Twitter handle is Natsuno Yoru, which is a
Can
lot.
you spell that?
N-A-T-
Bless you, first of all.
NATSUNOYORU.
You spell that like it's a normal word.
Well, it's a normal word in Japanese.
There you go.
Multiple words in
That's fair.
Japanese. But yes.
Fair enough. Yep.
Yep. So yeah,
Cool.
check it out. Hopefully I'll...
Is this something you're hoping to publish, or just kind of a labor of love?
It's mostly a labor of love. At this point, if I got to the end of it, finished it, went back, edited it, went through like the whole thing and rewrote it and edited it and everything, and then like it never saw the light of day, I'd still be happy because it's mostly just an idea that I want to get out like of my body.
Sure.
But if something cool happened with it, that'd be cool too. So yeah, we'll see.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Got any specific video games or anything you're working on at the moment?
Let's see. Well, I'm a big Destiny fan. Destiny expansion comes out in October, so I'm really excited for that. But aside from that, I picked up Remnant.
Okay.
Yep. It's
Which
like
was kind of Destiny-esque, right?
not really. It's more like it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic shooter Souls game almost. Like it's not a lot of Souls, but you can see there's definitely some design
of words.
Yeah, there's definitely some design inspiration taken from like the Souls series, where there's like checkpoints that respawn all the enemies, and you have a stamina bar, and like loot drops are rare but impactful, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But I started getting really into it because there's a lot more going on in the story than you would at first expect.
Okay.
You first boot it up and you're like, yeah, it's just a post-apocalyptic. It's like, it's like a kind of Fallout-y shooter game. Like, that's cool. But then as you get more and more, as you get deeper and deeper into the story, you're like, whoa, there's so much more going on with like different worlds and dimensions and like people who can like explore those dimensions in their dreams. And I was like, that sounds familiar. So I really liked it. Yeah, it's cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I saw trailers for that, and I didn't know it was like, I had never even heard of it leading up to that.
Yeah,
so.
it kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, but I wouldn't say it's like, the best game I've ever played, shooter-wise or Souls-wise, but it's definitely enjoyable. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's also kind of built for multiplayer, which is cool. Like,
okay.
Most Souls games have that sort of like, I'll join your game for like one boss encounter, and then I leave, And
Is it kind of squad-based, or is it more like two people slugging it out?
Yeah, no, it's like, I think it's like up to 3 players, so
Okay.
it's kind of like Diablo.
Okay.
In a way, yeah.
Interesting.
And actually, it reminds me a lot of Hellgate London, which was a game that I played in like 2007. That was sort of a Diablo-esque shooter.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. But Borderlands 3 comes out soon.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I'm actually running through Borderlands 2 with a bunch of friends because I've never played it 4-player before, and
geez.
now it's
It's
the
so much
age
fun.
of $20 gets you all the games that were released
And they
up
dropped
to now.
like a new expansion for it.
Yep, that's
At the
why
end,
we're
like,
playing
what?
is the building up to that.
Crazy.
And they uploaded a patch for the later gen systems that like improves the texture quality. And,
Nice.
Anyway,
That's cool. Yeah,
plus
I'm definitely excited
the
for that.
visual style of that game just ages well anyway, just because the
Yeah,
cell shading is so stylistic. But
And I've heard from several people, including several listeners who may or may not even be listening right now, that the game Control is right up my alley. Like, so far up my alley that they keep begging me to play it. And I'm like, I want to.
that's from the same studio that did Alan Wake, right?
It is,
Okay.
yeah, which is great. And judging from the fact that they keep mentioning that I specifically would like it, it's probably very mind-bendy. And I love mind-bendy stuff, so I would definitely like that's the next thing on my agenda. I think, to play.
That's. I think it was Dave put that on my radar recently.
Yep.
Yeah, he was a big proponent.
Yes.
Cool.
So I'll sleep at some point.
You'll sleep when Azathoth wakes
Yeah,
up.
exactly.
Ian,
you?
what about you?
Oh, what about Ian?
Hello there. I think there's been a few things that have been kind of occupying my non-Arkham time, but one of them is playing through the latest Lord of the Rings card game expansion, Shadow in the East, the deluxe expansion. So I've been playing through... I've played all 3 quests. The last quest has beaten me twice, but I still have to keep playing that one.
Alcor's back, baby!
yeah. One of my favorite story moments so far. That's
yeah.
it's a cool little return for those long-time Lord of the Rings players. But the enemies in that one are cool because it's Easterling enemies, but it's the first time we've seen some kind of attachments for enemies in the past, but this is like their thing is they kind of try to Voltron up with a bunch of attachments, which I think is cool because it's coming the cycle after the Dale player cards where we got to do that, like loading up with attachments, and now it's like,
we're Dale.
Yeah, exactly.
Look at me.
Look at me.
Yeah.
We are Dale now. So, which makes sense, Dale is on the edge of Easterlings and all that. So it's kind of like a cool mirror image thing. But anyway, I'm having fun with the quest and that cycle and that expansion, sorry. The second quest in the box is like a reimagining of Steward's Fear, which is one of my favorite quests from the past.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some cool stuff going on. I haven't yet touched Smeagol Hero in the way that I want to because I want to run a Grima
Smeagol?
Smeagol, just like
would.
undesirables deck. So that is on my docket to try at some point.
Nice.
With
that
the
expansion's a
One
lot
Ring, of
fun.
course. Yeah.
Who's wielding the One Ring? Grima?
Yeah. I mean,
jeez.
come on. Is that even a real question?
Jeez. Yeah, I guess so. Oh man.
Ian, don't feel bad because like I don't play Lord of the Rings anymore, but those 2 cards, I'm like, and I want to play a deck. Based
I
on
mean,
those.
it's the One Ring. How can you resist?
Well, and like Greenman Smeagol.
Yeah.
Like, that just, oh my God. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. And a brand new card I can't talk right now. Brand new card type contracts. Which like, I don't know. It's so many cycles back. I think since the Against the Shadow cycle, I've been saying, like, I wish we kind of had something similar to Agendas and Thrones that just, like, sit there from the time you play and affect, like, your deck building or how you play. That just kind of, like, imposes a rule on you, but also gives you a benefit. And so in the box, we got kind of like a fellowship contract, so you have to have like unique characters only, and then if you get 9, then it basically flips and you get some goodies for meeting that requirement. So
plus 1 to all your stats. Yeah.
it's funny. It's funny how such like just one card, because of the kind of card type it is, just like opens up so much deck building space. So
yeah, contracts are a huge game changer. Like, if you're a Lord of the Rings player and you haven't picked up the latest expansion, like, contracts are huge.
Yes,
for sure.
There's just that card alone.
There's a couple that haven't been announced or spoiled yet that I had a hand in that I really like. That,
nice.
Like, oh geez, I never play a deck without them now. Yeah,
it's kind of like they're basically like agendas from Thrones, where
right? Yeah.
Usually there's, I would assume, going to be one that just makes sense for the deck you're playing.
Depends. We try to design them in such a way that they have, pretty, not necessarily severe drawbacks, but severe enough deck building considerations that it's not like an auto include. Sure. None of them are going to be like, oh yeah, just slap that one in there. They're all going to be like heavy considerations. Yeah.
Still cool. Yeah. I love that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I played Thrones 1.0 back in the day, and some of the were they? No, I forget what the name of the card was.
Agendas,
like the agendas, yes. But the one where I could bring people back from the dead, like it just
I don't remember the name of that one, but I know which one you're talking about.
You had an 80 card deck. I think it fit best with Baratheon and who are the sea people?
Greyjoy.
The Greyjoy.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, 1.0 was just. I realized it, like near the end, it got a little unwieldy, but gotta love that game. I still love that game. Technical time though.
Yeah, Scott, what's up for you?
Nowadays, besides Arkham, the Super Nintendo games on Switch.
Nice.
So, like 2 days ago, they brought back a bunch of Super Nintendo games. And it's free on Switch if you have the like online player thing, which is like
cool.
If you subscribe to the online service, which is like what, $5 a month?
Which
less than that, very much less than that.
That's cool.
I think it's like $30 Canadian a year.
Oh yeah, so it must be like $5 a quarter.
Right.
No, wait, that math still doesn't work out. But anyway, it's inexpensive.
No, it is very, very cheap. And being able, it's weird being able to play Super Mario World again was just
on the couch.
It was just heartwarming to me. Like it brings me back a lot. So there's a bunch of other games. They're gonna add more. I hope they add Donkey Kong.
Oh, I'm sure they will at some point.
Wasn't Donkey Kong like? Weren't those first couple games like Rare? Like, wasn't there some other publisher involved?
Yeah, it's Rare, I think. Yeah.
Who's owned by Microsoft now, so it's probably never going to happen. Sorry, guys.
Were they on the SNES Classic?
Oh no, but wait, hang on. We just got Banjo-Kazooie in Smash.
I don't know.
Okay, never mind. It's probably possible.
We're reaching like an unprecedented era of cooperation between video game companies, like,
which is a good thing. Oh yeah,
which is a great thing. Yeah.
Sony's like the last one on the boat for crossplay, right?
And even they're caving. I mean, they're doing crossplay in Destiny now.
Yeah. And what else?
It's Call of Duty, I think, or maybe not. I might be wrong on that one, but like Battle Royale,
Rocket League,
Fortnite. I think
Rocket League.
Yeah, Rocket League. But yeah, it's definitely like, and there's more crossovers happening. I mean, Super Smash Brothers obviously is the king of that. But yeah, I have a SNES Classic hooked up at work, and sometimes when I take my lunch break, I'll just play a couple of rounds of something. It's great.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to, because I always played SNES with Super Mario World at my cousin's place. I'm looking forward to going through every single level myself and discovering every secret passage, level, whatever. Like, I want a 100% Super Mario World.
That's a lot.
You guys laugh, but
No, that's pretty on brand.
Yep.
that's what I do. So
Scott, we should. Well, we'll talk offline, but we should try you on Dark Souls. I'm playing the remaster on Switch right now, so
God, I don't want to play any Dark Souls or what's the one that Nick really loves?
Bloodborne. One of the best games ever made. Period.
I'm on playthrough number 3
here's
right
the
now
thing,
because I can't control myself.
It's so good. Play
Those
it
games that
immediately.
require you. They require you to just like be really good at button pushing, like at a certain exact time. Like no.
I mean,
just,
yes, but they're
I
also
used-
RPGs, and you can still kind of power level through stuff if you're,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're hard.
I
They're hard
realize
games.
I'm not going
gonna
to sell you
sugarcoat
on it in this moment, but I used to think that too, and I was wrong.
okay.
They are hard. I'm
Yeah,
not going to sugarcoat it. They're difficult games, but the feeling that you get of overcoming such a tough challenge is
it's
like unprecedented for me.
you guys
I
know
don't
that
necessarily like hard games, though. That's the thing. Like,
yeah.
Drop it.
like Legend of Zelda or the Breath of the Wild, right? Like it starts you out.
Breath of the
and you have
Wild
to beat.
took cues from the Souls series.
Oh yeah.
And sure did, but
Zelda
they're also
Souls.
like, we don't want to make our players hate this fucking game, so we're gonna make it like accessible.
Souls for kids.
I just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
I don't know.
Fine, we'll get you eventually.
I am willing between Sean and Matt. I will choose one game that you both choose. I will purchase it. You know what I mean? Like a Souls or
that is-
Bloodborne. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
I mean it's got to be Bloodborne.
Well, he doesn't have a PS4.
I don't
Well,
have
then
PS4.
you're Sorry.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I guess
Deal's
you're
done.
off the
Yeah,
hook.
you're good.
No, it's Sekiro. It's definitely got to be Sekiro.
Oh, Sekiro's real hard.
It is, but it's amazing.
It's really good though.
Have you beat it?
I still haven't. I'm still stuck on what's his face. Well, it's spoilers. Sekiro spoilers, right? But the second time you go up to the top of the castle and you fight the boss fight,
okay.
I can't beat that guy.
Oh,
He's
really?
impossible. I mean, he's not impossible, obviously. But I started learning the rhythm. I got to a point where I consistently was doing okay, and then like another game came out and I stopped playing for a while. And now it's like if I try to go back, I'm like, oh god, I'm horrible at this now.
So Dave was really far ahead of me when I was going through that game, and when I finally beat that boss,
You, like,
I was
skyrocketed
I was
ahead.
like, "Hey, yeah, guy, I finally got this guy." He's like, "Oh, good, you finally beat the final tutorial boss." I was like, "No, screw you, Dave."
For me, it was the Guardian Ape. I was stuck in the Guardian Ape forever.
Yep.
And when I finally figured out how to kill him, I was like, this exhilarating rush of like, oh, good, thank goodness.
That's probably
and
my
then
favorite.
it got back up again. Anyway,
That's one of my favorite fights in any Souls game.
oh
Anyway,
my god, it's so good.
Scott, the reason I think you would eventually like it, if the thing is like Souls games, like you kind of have to be right place, right time, in the right mindset. Otherwise, it's just going to be not fun.
Yep.
But
So right after Arkham Knights,
right,
because that
when you're ready
like,
to dive
I-
into something else.
I think our heavy period is like 2 weeks before GenCon to 2 weeks after Arkham Knights. That's our like
Yep.
peak Arkham time. So, okay, 2 weeks after Arkham Knights, you need me to try what?
Maybe Dark Souls or Sekiro. We'll discuss.
The good thing about Dark Souls is you
Okay.
have a huge build diversity.
That's
you
true.
can kind of customize your character a lot more than in Sekiro.
Yeah, Sekiro's way more like, hey, we gave you this dude who can do a bunch
You're
of cool
this guy.
things.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway,
Yep.
great game.
Dark Souls sounds more attractive to me.
It's probably a better
But
place
I'll-
to start.
Yeah, I think so.
It's gonna feel really. It does. I can confirm. I'm playing it right now. I started the series with Bloodborne. That is really fast and frenetic. Dark Souls feels a little clunky by comparison, but it's still really fun. Anyway,
What about you?
me, yeah. So I finally finished God of War,
Nice.
and by finished I mean I beat
So
the storyline. Like there's
Did you?
the what?
Did you beat
Yeah,
this
I
one?
may not have. I
Did
don't
you
know.
Actually, I'll talk to you after this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay.
There are still lots of boss fights that I didn't do. And
Right,
I
yeah.
really enjoyed
There's all the
them.
Valkyries.
Yeah, the Valkyries.
Oh, jeez.
And
there's, like, the different
Niflheim
realms,
and
yeah.
Muspelheim and just the different battle trials you can do. So I didn't finish all those. I got far enough in that I felt like I got the right experience out of it. Good freaking game, though.
That game's amazing.
Whew. And then I immediately started watching a Let's Play of it. And, like, in the Let's Play, they caught so many little things that I didn't because, you know, there's 3 people in the room looking at the screen and commenting on stuff. And it's like, wow, there's so many little things that, like, I just wasn't in the right place.
And, like, pieces of dialogue.
Yes, exactly.
That you can miss. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yep. Anyway, really fun game. So, as a result, I've picked Horizon Zero Dawn back up.
Nice.
And I now am faced with the really weird question of whether I pick up the game that I started a while ago, which was 30 hours in.
Oh, jeez. That's always tough.
Which now I've forgotten how to play.
You've forgotten how to play, and you've also forgot, like, what you were doing.
What I was doing, and now I'm at the point in the game where the game expects you to be good at it in order to play it. So
that's the only reason I never beat Dragon's Dogma.
Oh, okay.
Because I was, like, 50 hours in, because that game is so awesome, and I stopped playing for a while. The expansion came out. I bought the expansion. I started picking up the game again, and I was like, I don't remember anything. Literally nothing. What is happening? Like, yeah.
So I started a new game and then started to remember kind of like, where those threads led. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to watch like the cinematic,
and then get caught
YouTube summary and I'll just figure out the gameplay. I'll struggle through it for
30 hours of progress.
Because I would say playing Souls games a lot has really changed my perspective on how I handle struggle in gaming.
Yes. Yeah.
And a little bit in real life. But anyway.
I feel the same way.
Really good games. Really good games.
Word.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Matt, for coming on with us.
Anytime.
Always a pleasure to have you on. We'll have to, I don't know, we'll talk about maybe doing something streaming in person at Arkham Nights.
Yeah.
Something.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
So, thank you for joining us for episode 67 of Mythos Busters, and we'll catch you guys next time around for 68.
Later.
Bye.